Welcome to this board workshop. Welcome to board members who will be introduced at quorum call. Board staff, are a lot of board staff here to do presentations. Thank you for that, and to our audience. In case you don't remember, my name is Jane Dolan. I'm the president, so I attempt to preside. With me at the table here is our executive officer, Chris Leaf, our multitasker on all things, Mr. Knapp. Attorney Dua will be joining us online. Deputy Executive Officer Andrea Buckley, Chief Engineer Michael Wright. I'm pointing if you see that. And then staff will be introduced for this very complex, important meeting. So please know that the meeting is recorded, and I will ask Mr. Fresh Air, who's handling all this, if everyone who has asked to be admitted has been admitted. And since I can't see him, I don't know if it's a yes or no. No. Okay, got the nod, so that's done. Thank you very much. I will now call this meeting to order, Central Valley Flood Protection Board workshop this Friday, April 11th, to order. Just want to ask my board if I got the right date. Okay, thank you. I missed that one point. The first action is to establish attendance and quorum. Mr. Knapp, will you call the roll?
Member Andrews.
Present.
Member Bosler.
Here.
Member Griego. Here. Member Countryman, I believe, is online, and we're trying to get him on. Secretary Johnson.
I'm here.
Vice President Valines.
We expect him.
President Dolan.
I'm here. If I've done my math right, this constitutes a quorum of 5. We expect Mr. Valines, and we expect to get Mr. Countryman online so we can hear him soon. I'm sure he's watching. I understand from speaking with our executive officer this week that there are no introductions, no announcements. Correct. Is that correct? So then we can move on. I'm going to just do a brief review of the agenda. It's very brief. There's one item, but it's big, and it will take some time. Action is not expected, and as I understand, it's not requested of staff, but it would be thorough discussions. At the end of that presentation, which is called Board Items Regarding California Code of Regulations, Title 23, Waters Division Number 1. Thank you for putting all of that, since we don't own all of Title 23, just Division 1. So thanks for that. At the conclusion of that, we'll ask for public comments. That's been a bit of a rearrangement, and that's the way it will be. And at that public comments, it's matters related to our work, but not on the agenda. So we don't really go into a big discussion on it. I prefer that you fill out a card if you want to be called upon, not necessary. If you're doing this online and wish to speak, you need to raise your hand so it would be identified so that I'll know to call you. I don't have a screen in front of me, so that will be told to me. There will be no closed session, no further items on this. The next board meeting is Friday, April 25th. Is that correct? So the board has received about an 8-page homework for this, and there's going to be lengthy presentations, so it's kind of hard to know how long this meeting will go. We're not going to have a lunch break, but I want you to know if I think it's appropriate, I'll call breaks, because that's what I do. So now to the workshop. Executive officer is going to introduce this.
Who's got the slides?
Can we pull the slides up, Greg? Not Harvey, don't worry.
I think that's why I call him Mr. Fresh Air.
Good morning, President Dolan, board members. Chris Leaf, your executive officer. I just wanted to briefly introduce this item. It's a very important topic. We had a workshop on this last August where we introduced some of these concepts and staff has been diligently working on this over the last several months. It's duties that they take on in addition to their regular work, and I very much appreciate all the effort and thought that's been put into this. As to reiterate the context, we have been asked by the legislature, and it was in the 2018 to become less dependent on the
Sorry.
general fund.
Next slide, please.
So this has been a longstanding issue to get us off the reliance on the general fund to the extent that we have been. We adopted fees back in 2019, and they have not generated the level of income that we expected at the time. And they were static, so they were not able to be raised over time without going through an entire regulatory process over again.
I just want to note at this time that Vice President Valines has arrived. Thank you and welcome.
Fees for regulatory services are normal in government at all levels of government, and we've been an outlier in that our regulatory programs have been supported by the general fund. The general philosophy behind this effort is that projects, programs, activities that depend on our regulatory oversight should bear the cost of that regulatory oversight. It's uncomfortable for some of the regulated community that has been used to the general fund subsidy. However, I should note that reducing our reliance on the general fund will help us secure resources to provide better services to the regulated community. And that's one of the main goals of this effort. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Buckley to MC.
Good morning, Andrea Buckley, Deputy Executive Officer for the board. Next slide, please. So just go over a quick presentation overview. As Mr. Leaf mentioned, we have quite a few topics to cover today. We're going to speak to the outreach we've done to date on the proposal. We're going to discuss the fees that we already have in place and updates to those fees, including permit application review, project authorizations, and our inspection programs. We will also be discussing new proposed fees, which the board spends time for analysis and services related to those actions and transactions, including time variance requests, revisions and plans, property management related to the Sacramento and San Joaquin Drainage District, including land licensing, rights of entry, and property conveyances requested by external parties. And we'll also be discussing system improvement fees for our large-scale landscape projects. We will also be discussing waivers, deferrals, and refunds, and how those will be applicable in the new process, or how we are proposing that they be addressed. And then we will also speak to our future updates, including the administrative updates related to inflationary costs. And then finally, the next steps and what the board and the public can expect as we move through the rulemaking package process. Next slide, please. So outreach is a component of this proposal that we're working towards. We're very grateful to have the regulated community provide context and a direction on how they implement projects, specifically how. So after our last year's workshop on August 2024, we took those comments and really narrowed our proposals down to the point where in January 2025 we presented those to the Central Valley Flood Control Association in a focus group. And we received some really great feedback from that group and from that interaction. And it actually changed some of the methodologies that we were working on and taking into account some of those concerns. And so that brings us today to our April 2025 proposed fee discussion. We continue to have monthly updates with Central Valley Flood Control Association on fees and other topics related to our regulatory programs. And we will continue coordination with Department of Water Resources and California Natural Resource Agencies as we develop this proposal. So I would like to introduce the panel we have today that will be covering multiple topics over multiple programs. We have Preston Shotbell, our inspections chief, Mr. Greg Harvey, Flood System Improvement Branch Manager, Michael Zalazzo, who is also in the Flood System Improvement Branch, Senior Engineer, and Michael Wright, Chief Engineer, will also be covering topics here today. We hope to stop after each discussion point and leave some time and space for comment from the public and from board members to discuss each proposal. Of course, so the board comments and then comments from the public here. Next slide, please. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mr. Preston Shotbell to address our first topic, which is the proposed fee updates for our encroachments that we may be already familiar with. Preston?
Thank you, Andrea. My name is Preston Shotbell. I'm the manager for our inspection section, and I've been working with the rest of our staff internally to develop these fees and update them based on our current practices, our regulations, and our requirements. And I wanted to take you first on a little bit of background of how we got to the proposal we're showing you to you today. So first, when we were developing the fees the first time, it was based on data that staff was putting into our databases to perform the permitting tasks, right? Reviewing an application, technical review, environmental, all those technical pieces, the administrative portions, all the way through the issuance. And so we had some years of data to go on, and we used that data to find trends in the types of encroachments that we permit and see if certain encroachments cost more because of various factors, certain types of encroachments cost less. And that's what the current fee schedule is based upon. And that was about 18 months of data at the time. We have continued that, keeping track of how much time staff is spending on different types of encroachments. And we figured, well, we have 18 months of data. Now we'll have, a good 5 years of data to pull from. That'll be narrowing in, and we'll feel more confident in the numbers for each type of encroachment. So we brought those numbers to the focus group, to our partners, and found that there really wasn't that much of a difference between the different types of encroachments as listed in the encroachment fee table. So taking a fee, raising it by a certain amount based on, increasing staff costs, increasing overhead, those types of things, it really didn't give us the difference in the types of encroachments that we thought it would give us. And it was really apparent at that focus group that it was less the type of encroachment that drove the cost and more the process in which an encroachment gets permitted, right? And so we thought about that very closely and sort of went back to the drawing board on what are these tasks that we do, and how does permission for someone to do work on around our adopted plan of flood control get approved. So we built this up, and what we came up with is a factored approach. Okay, so it's still based on the encroachment type, but we've gone down further, knowing that not every bridge is created equal, depending upon the where in the system it might be. Is it over a federal levee? Is it in a designated floodway or regulated stream, right? There are different factors we're looking into that. We are still meeting Title 23, but the fact of the matter is that goes into it. So that's that first bubble on the bottom left there, encroachment category and subcategory. So not just the categories, but we're also saying, where might that swimming pool be? Is it close to the levee, or is it out in a designated floodway, which has very different characteristics that we would care about as an agency. And that goes, and so that factors into the technical review factor, right? The things that we review for that said swimming pool may be different in a designated floodway, whereas for a levied area, we're talking about geotechnical factors, we're talking about hydrology on the water side, and seepage paths. There's a lot more technical review and a lot more regulatory portion. That gets me to the next factor. The jurisdiction, right? Is this in a federal area where a state plan of flood control area where we have assurances to the federal government for the facility, and we're going to be coordinating with Section 408 at the U.S. Army Corps. Believe it or not, that is a lot of work for staff to tee up an application to make sure that it has the best chance to quickly get through their approvals as well. So that is a factor. And then finally not finally, but second to last, we have the permit approval method within our state regulations, which is certain encroachments obviously are eligible to be delegated to the executive officer for approval. So that doesn't require going to a monthly board meeting and getting, we still do a report, but not a full staff report, and preparing and putting on the agenda and everything that goes along with that. So there is a divergence in the amount of really an effort level of staff's precious time to get these things through. So that's a factor. And then finally, some encroachments and some applicants consider the need for a variance or a waiver, right? Where practically speaking, there's no way they can meet this need that Title 23 has, and the staff really has to dig in deeper on that to shore up and give you the best information on their recommendation for whether that variance to not maybe meet one standard of Title 23, that you can feel confident in the analysis that got us to that recommendation. So that is an additional effort to get to that point. So we put all those together, and what results is a bridge that we had one fee for before now could be different from the next bridge depending upon those factors. So what we're going to present in the next few slides are that range of what those fees could be in the future. Those obviously reflect increases in staff and business costs that we have not updated since 2019, but try to give that flexibility so that not every project is created equal, and it's closer to the work provided. I also will say that so currently we have, there's permits that have multiple types of encroachments listed on them, and the current practice is that we don't those aren't additive. We don't say, okay, you have a retaining wall plus landscaping, so we add those fees for each one. We just take the highest amount of those two, and that's your fee, because again, in the process, we're still carrying that through in this scheme. So if you have a bridge and a pipe, you would take the fee that's the highest for those, and that's the fee for the whole entire thing. So it's not meant to be additive per encroachment. That makes sense. But again, I think the benefits of this is that it's a more project-specific approach and doesn't lump every type of project only on the category that it is. So it's a little bit more granular. Next slide, please. So with that, this is the first quote-unquote page, I guess, of the proposed permit application review fees. So as you can see, for instance, drains and ditches, we have these subcategories. So DF and RS, just to lay it out there, are designated floodways or regulated streams. And then the land side and water side obviously refer to a levied area if you're on the land side of the levee or the water side of the levee. So you can start to see some trends there. And then the last thing to note is everything in green are those encroachments that are currently lined out in Title 23 as eligible for EO delegation, right? So it doesn't have to go to you all for approval, but is allowed to go through the same technical process and be approved and issued through our executive officer. So you'll see that the lower range for some of those green highlighted categories is lower, right? Because we don't have that element of the process baked in there. So we'll move on to the next slide, please. So moving on, this is still small-scale encroachments. The amount of that fee would be shown to the applicant at the time of their application, to be sure. So it is meant to be, based on the factors that you presented us in your application, these are the elements that, assuming you're not changing your project scope or description through the process, there would be a known quantity right out of the gate. This isn't like 11th hour, oh, it's actually going to cost this much. There'd be a calculation up above that they would know at the time of application. We are fully, we have a lot of moving parts, as you know, with the development of our permit application portal and more public-facing, more automated things that currently take a lot of staff time. Those elements that could be decided by the elements you put into an application would be calculated with this fee. So that's the intent. All the way through, it's meant to be transparent, and I've also put the equation for how we got this range in the staff report. I didn't want to get too far into the weeds on the slides here, but I figured the guardrails to show what these ranges would be sufficient, but we can dive down into any of that, any of your questions as we go along. So of note, you can see swimming pools here, right, which have a wide range of potential fees. And again, that reflects that different level of technical review. Are we on? Yeah, swimming pools, I'm sorry, the second to the bottom there. Again, reflecting the fact of we're looking at different things for a designated floodway regulated stream than we are in a levied area. Next slide, okay. We can go back to any of these. I'm just gonna, go ahead.
Can you just level set in terms of what is considered levied area, like how close to the toe of the levee?
I would say it would be within either 15 feet of the toe, land side, or the real estate extents that we have that are considered part of the adopted plan of flood control. But I'm open if there's any other engineers want to contradict, so.
But you would propose it be clear so that
Yes.
like applicant could understand.
Right.
If they could make up modifications.
Yes, and I think that part of one of the most successful things we've seen in the past few years is setting up regular pre-application meetings that someone says, I have this project, I don't know how it fits in your regulations, that our permitting group can sit down and say, this is what it would be, but maybe if you alter it, you can avoid your working with us at all, or strategize that early on. So, okay.
That was Board Member Bosler.
Okay, for this one, we're also trying to break out the size of certain projects. So you see that we, for instance, have poles with 10 or less poles. It's not really a huge difference in the size. Again, that reflects some of that project, the process that we have built in as a board to get something approved. However, these can really range in size to 1 to 2 poles to several miles that are affecting several different systems. It can be a wide range for those. So we're trying to take those into account as well. And one more thing I wanted to say on this slide is that obviously while the majority of the base fee has gone up, some of them have gone down, right? Some of them, our initial estimate had a small sample size and it was not a great estimate. So for instance, the trails, their current fee is $8,000 and now they are anywhere from $3,000 to $6,500. Okay, next slide, please. Down at the bottom, we also have our project authorizations, right? Activities that, again, someone brings to us and our permitting groups look to see whether it requires a permit. And those don't end up in a full permit being issued. Maybe it's someone wants concurrence that what they're doing on their properly permitted encroachment is indeed maintenance, and we concur with that, or minor alterations that do not negatively affect the adopted plan of flood control. Those are modest increases reflecting some of those cost increases over time. Next slide, please. Okay, so how does this work for a particular project? So here are a few examples. So the first example, the applicant proposes to construct a vehicular bridge spanning, say, the Sacramento River near Colusa. So the Sacramento River in that area has federal levees on both sides. And that applicant, maybe for some reason they can't hit the chord height that's required, they need to request a variance. So all those factors, this is how they play out. And I'm sorry I failed to mention earlier, but every permit that we go through would start with a base fee of $1,000 that would be due with permit application. I'll get into that in a minute, but that base fee is what all the rest of those other factors are based upon. So moving to the right, that $1,000 base fee is multiplied by these factors. The technical review factor, so obviously our engineering, environmental, land, legal, all those pieces, those reviews. Whether it has section 408. In Colusa, those are federal levies, so there is 408 coordination. There's a full package that gets to the core and coordination on following up with those to make sure we get their letter of permission. Bridges are not subject to executive officer delegation, so it's going to the board for approval. And just as a note, that would include things that are on consent or hearing. It's getting to you all, and that run up is a bit of effort. And then finally, there's that variance that we talked about in addition to the board approval. That is that really we've seen with the recent variances that is a significant dedication of time and resources for that. So moving down to example 2, that applicant proposes to construct again a vehicular bridge, but this time it's across Pleasant Grove Creek in Pleasant Grove, California. So that is defined as a regulated stream in Title 23. It's non-federal, but it's within our adopted plan of flood control. They meet the clearance requirements, so no variances are needed. So then we go through that again, the base fee plus a technical review. There's no section 408 because it's non-federal. There's no variance because they met our standards, but we still had to go to the board for approval. That is a smaller fee than the first example, $4,500. So, okay. Yes.
Sorry, can you rewind just a second and walk us through the parenthetical factors like the 1.5
Sure.
and the 1.0 and the 2.0 and just make sure I'm tracking that?
Sure. They are factors that we've put in to reflect a portion of the hourly rate of staff and the effort, the hours and the hourly rate of staff to do those types of tasks. So 1.5 we multiplied out by the weighted average of the technical and managerial staff to get something worked out for what it costs to say do that technical review. So those factors are part of what we were working in to make sure that the overall number met the portion of the cost that we needed. So, for instance, Section 408 coordination of 2.0, that's, well, actually, let me use the board approval of 2.0. So 2.0 times 1,000. That's versus if we went to executive officer approval. That factor would be 0.5, so the fee would be much less for that, but it's still part of it. So.
For the technical review, 1,000, the 1.5, and the 1.0,
Great question. So the 1.5, and we're not showing this in the report, but the 1.5 is due to the fact that it is a bridge on the a bridge. Well, a bridge that's spanning a river, right? So that's that 1.5 for the bridge. So a fence, for instance, on the land side, which would be a much lower risk, would have that smaller factor there. So.
what's the 1.0?
The 1.0 is sorry, 1 second, is just the technical review itself. We had worked those out and ranged from 1.0 to 2.0 to see what the right number is. It came out to 1.0 in the end with the full cost. So we could really drop that out possibly, but that's where our calculations are.
I mean, I think I'm tracking the level of difficulty part. I just wasn't sure why some of them have, you know,
Two factors versus three. Yeah, that first one is the only one that, again, at this point, we probably could drop out that 1.0 because it's consistent across all the technical reviews. At the time, we didn't really know how we were going to be developing that, so that could potentially be dropped out, and it'd just be those two factors.
And for the transcript, the question was to solicit that answer about why some of them had two parentheticals next to them and some had one.
Right.
That's Board Secretary Johnson asking those questions.
Great.
You took me back to my college math with some of this stuff. It was not fun.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so we will, next slide, please. Okay, so that's the end of the portion for permit application review. So I'm going to pause there for questions and comments.
Okay, this is the pause time. Board members, let me look here. Questions? You two. Bosler and Johnson took care of that over here. Vice President Vines?
Thank you. So I had the same question Brian did, so thanks for breaking that out. The second one is, I don't know if we're thinking of this, I'm not even sure if we can, but do we ever think about some kind of fee that if somebody wants to expedite, is there a way to do that? Have we thought about that? Or you could, you add on that in case somebody needs to? Just curious.
I don't believe we had considered that at this point. Yeah, don't think we have. Other agencies have done more. We can consider that, but we'd have to talk about it more. Yeah.
Consider something that needs, the request is to expedite. Another page next time. Member Grego?
If I just follow up on that, I agree 100%. And, being in the county, there would be times like when development was really busy that we would enter into agreements with a separate third party. And if somebody wanted to pay their price, they could get this process, advanced. And I think having those agreements in place and also having that fee in place as well as would be important. For instance, if there's a gush of money that's coming out for flood control, everybody wants to jump on board. This would be a really great add to the service. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Countryman has a hand up. I saw a head, but I didn't say one or the other. All right, we'll proceed. Next up, Mr. Velazzo.
Mike Salazzo, Board Staff. I just wanted to provide some additional information and to support Preston's response to Board Member Bosler's question regarding swimming pools and their proximity to the levee. I don't know all the details behind the calculations and all, but I just wanted to say that, a swimming pool's location is generally referred to as 10, 15 feet, depending on if you're looking at the water code or if you're Title 23 or whatever. But it's really whatever could affect the integrity, functioning, or maintenance of the levee. That proximity is what the staff need to determine whether that's going to, how close that swimming pool will need to be for the levee. So it could be greater than 10 feet. Okay.
Sorry, so it really depends on the specific, there isn't a standard. I mean, I'm just a little confused by this 10 to 15 feet kind of, like, I
Right,
mean,
so
if it's
yeah.
10 feet, it's not okay. If it's 15 plus, it's okay.
Right, all depends
Or it
on.
depends.
Yeah, it depends on how large it is or how that facility would impact the stability of the levee itself. So it could be a large swimming pool that's 20 feet away from the levee toe, which could be a problem. So it's really based on, but I have experts behind me to help us
It
out.
looks like Mr. Lamb is going to enter into this. Mr. Lamb.
Good morning, board members. Steve Lamb, Permit Section Manager. So the distance for the swimming pool has a tremendous variability on the depth of the swimming pool and the location of the swimming pool. So there are many factors. I think what we have to take into play is in our regulations, we say within 300 feet of a levee. So we're taking in this overall zone to ensure that anything that's built or constructed there has low propensity to cause levee failure. So the distance is very much an accordion. It could be 10 feet, it could be up to 300 feet, depending upon the activity and where it is. And I've never seen one as far as 300 feet, so I think it's a buffered number. But where it will come into play with the fees that are being proposed, really in the designated floodways, adjacent to an unlevied facility, is really where the flexibility will occur with what Preston was explaining. So currently, the code we follow is in our Article 8 standards, Section 137B, which speaks to retention basins and the susceptibility for seepage when we remove material adjacent to a levee. Does that answer the question?
The nod was yes. Is it still you, Mr. Shotbell?
That's up to you all, if we want to continue or move on.
Oh, let me ask for if there's public
stay here.
comment. I always have a card here from Mr. Engler. Do you want to speak on this one? As I understand it, you want to speak each time.
Yeah, I think that would be appropriate.
It's fine. I just want to be sure I do call on you.
Rather than me read off a whole list. Got to push the button. Tom Engler, MBK Engineers, here on behalf of the Central Valley Flood Control Association. I will come up during different portions when we do have comments. We initially don't have a lot of comments on this first section. We think that these fees are fairly appropriate. I would like to thank staff, and your staff has been great since the last workshop. They have reached out numerous times. We've had a formal meeting where we all got together and went over proposed fees. A lot of revisions have happened since then, taking our comments into consideration. So it's been a great working relationship all the way through. So please make sure you thank your staff for all the hard work they've done on this. They've been great. In terms of Member Valine's, the expedited portion, I would caution against that just because everybody's going to want an expedited permit, and then who do you expedite and who do you not? The other thing is there's a lot of things that are not in your staff's control on these permits. So the environmental, the core process, those types of things, and it may give people the false impression that you're going to be able to get them a permit fairly quickly when that's not always the case. So it's just something that if you do carry forward, you want to be real careful that you do it in a way that works. With that, we don't have any other comments on the encroachment permit fees, but I'll see in a little bit on some of the other ones.
Mr. Engler, thank you for reminding us, as we wish to do and will do, to compliment staff on its work. But we also thank the Central Valley Flood Control Association for its participation throughout the process as well. Is that a hand up? Or are you just waving at me?
If this is a natural pause, like for this section.
It is.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to make a comment about the methodology and the process. Like, I think it's really good that we were able to quantify and put the data together about what was driving the length of time and effort and cost. And so I think that's a real improvement over the flat fees that we had, which are inherently unfair, right? Because some projects take a lot less time than others because of their complexity. I think, though, it's still important, you know, we looked at, and the other reason I really like this, it's a little bit of an ulterior reason, but like very often in the legislative process and policies that have been enacted over time, usually not all at once, that add time and review from maybe different entities and different processes without really a full understanding of the costs of that. I think that this kind of time and complexity, like measure of that's how you base the fee, like really helps to bring together those two issues. Like time is not free. It's not free for the person that's doing the project, and it's not free for the people in government that are trying to go to all these different places to pull the review together. And so we need to think about how we can tighten that up. I was so buoyed by the presentations from you all, plus the Army Corps of Engineer a couple months ago, that really like were able to identify like with quite a lot of clarity, like where a lot of the time is being added and the delays are coming in the process, and ways and many great suggestions about how to tighten that up. And so I hope that as we like continue to move forward in this journey, like we're doing a better job, like reflecting, you know, the added processes, the added things that are not free. they're not free to government, they're not free to the public, like, and we really evaluate what is needed and try and do everything we can to streamline and make these things more efficient. Because ultimately, like we're here to do a task, which is improve the state plan of flood control and make sure we have a very durable system that protects people and property from the changing climate. Like we need to go faster than we've gone before. And all of these things just, it's like a death by 1,000 cuts, right? Like, so we need to do better looking at how these things add costs and time to our projects. So I appreciate the linkage here, and I think it will serve us well.
That was Member Bosler, thank you. Well said. There's some nods going around the table. Yeah. An explanation and the factors really helps, rather than it's time to up the fees, the way that former board I sat on used to do. So thank you. Anyone else? Is there anyone online that's raised their hand? I've lost Mr. Knapp, so I don't know. No? Okay, then you can continue. Am I the only one hearing the echo? There's someone online. Oh, there is someone online? There is someone online? Do we have a name? Emily. Emily, if you would give us your full name and unmute yourself, we'll hear your comment.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yes.
I'm Emily Papalardo with DCC Engineering, and on the small scale encroachment item, I understand we do need to have a safe flood control system. And I work out here with a lot with private landowners and encouraging them to go through the permitting process as opposed to just going out and doing the work. And they've got two issues, though. I think it's always with them, it's cost and timing. And so I understand that there is a need for the fees and that this legislature is requiring this. But if there's an increase in fees, I fear that these landowners that want to go underground anyway are going to be encouraged to go underground even more, while we continue to go, no, you got to go get a permit. It's better that way, and it's safer for everyone. And so that's my caution with the increase in fees is just I want to have landowners go through the permitting route as opposed to the other way of just doing the work and not getting it done. But if there's a way that maybe this can speed up the process, that would help too. But that's my only comment on these. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other hands up? Is that a thumb up? No more.
I just wanted to speak to
Member
the
Andrews.
echo problem. It's coming from
Try
down
to do, Barb.
here. There's a time lag. I don't know if there's a way to silence it, but
Huh?
it's very problematic for those of us who are anywhere nearby.
I'm not, yeah, it must be worse for you because I'm like, what am I hearing? All right, you technicians are getting a lot of advice from these smart people up here on the board. I see them there looking at various aspects of this. There certainly are enough wires across the road. Let's just take a little pause here. Nobody leave. This is not a Dolan break because we'll watch people at work. It's also important that we only have one mic on at a time.
Test.
Testing echo. No echo.
Wow, thank you, Fresh Air crew and Jonah. Okay, where are we? So that was just over the echo, is that right, from here? Board members to my right, board members to my left. Okay, we're done. No? Member Bosler?
Just I think it's helpful
Oh, that's
to
better.
bring up this point because it's something when I was reading the materials, I thought very much about, and I remember giving this feedback at the last time we had a public meeting on this. In a system like we do have this really challenging problem, which is, and we know this because we historically have all of these unpermitted encroachments.
Yeah.
So there is, going to be some amount of people that are going to look at these fees and think like, well, I'm just going to ask for forgiveness and not permission, right? So like it's a challenging subject. I mean, it's a challenging issue. I think it recognizes the complexity of government regulatory programs when we're talking about individual landowners with varying degrees of ability to pay, frankly, and also kind of historical norms. And I think that we just have to acknowledge that. I think we want, as a board, to make sure that we're increasing compliance. We spend a lot of time at many of our board meetings talking about how to figure out how to enforce on illegal encroachments and think about how we do that in a way that is really meaningful and important to the job that we have here to protect the integrity of the state plan of flood control. So it just is it's a factor. I don't know that I have all the answers here, but I do think that for some of these more minor variances, like large increases in fees are going to have an impact on overall compliance potentially.
Yeah, it's a challenge to try to figure out what to do or inspect. Member Grego?
Yeah, and I think there's about 3 of us or 4 of us that sit on this board that are from rural counties, small, poor rural counties. And the last thing we want is to be the barrier for, the flood control system. I was happy to see that in this report, that there is the ability for this board to do waivers, whether it's partial or full waivers for small communities that may struggle to try to get certain things done within the system. What I also would like to see is that when there is the ability for small groups of people who have common interest in generally in the same area to maybe look at a group type of permit. I mean, I don't know if that's possible, but it's something we could look at so that maybe it will reduce the cost overall for these separate districts that might be right there, next to each other or in close proximity, that they could look at bringing in a type of project or application that benefits, multiple projects, whether encroachments or otherwise, and maybe find a way to reduce those costs if that's a barrier, and trying to get compliance so that they're, it's all legal. So just a suggestion. I hope that, that works out. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Grego. I think you saw the nods from staff to look at that. This is great work that you brought to us, but we have opinions.
Through the chair, I think we have experience, don't we? I mean, we've done this before. I mean, on other boards, and so I think that we're just lending our experience here.
True enough. We weren't put here because we don't know anything. Okay. No more hands up from board? None in the audience? All right. Mr. Chabot, which page are we on now?
We are on slide 11. So we're moving on to.
Just so you know, there's 34 slides, unless you added some yesterday.
I hope not. So now we're moving on to, actually you can go back one slide, please. Thank you. So now we're moving on to construction inspections. We've gone through permit application review. Now we're into the construction inspection side. So we took a similar approach that we originally did with the permit application review, in that our inspection staff does update our database with their hours, with their time, based on status and activities that are needed to get a project from permit issuance through construction and close out to say, yes, this encroachment was built according to the permit conditions and to Title 23. We're good here. They did a great job, right? And so we've increased that data set. It now goes from about January 2019 through June 2024. Again, we had some issues with data gaps, right? So people are working hard and don't put in all the hours maybe that they spent on a project. And so, or projects just have their own life of themselves. They don't conform to all of our little, activity buckets, that kind of thing. So what we had to do was backfill some of those gaps with minimum amount of hours to say, write a report for their inspection, their field work, or a closeout, right? So we filled those gaps, and what we came up with was, the fees that I'm about to show you are a portion of the costs that are a function of the staff time for a task multiplied by that weighted average of the technical staff doing that work. So that's mainly a water resource engineer, senior water resource engineer, and that hourly rate. So you get that cost, take a portion of it, and there's our fee for the absolute minimum to get a project where it needs to be. I will reiterate that the proposed fees we're about to show are always basically less than our overall staff cost. It doesn't account for the full 40-hour week of a staff member. Other meetings they go to, it is for the tasks that are the output of that activity and nothing else. And it's less. The fee is less than the cost. Yeah, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice President Vines.
Thanks. Just a quick question. Would these be additive to what we just saw earlier? So we're running.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Good point. So here are the proposed fees. They are a bit more normalized than the permit application review fees. Currently we had a kind of across the board $500, with those increased staff and operating costs, and really not just, coming from a database and seeing what those numbers are, but really back checking it on like, okay, take away that. What's been our experience for getting something from point A to point Z of permit issuance to construction completion, and our role in that. This 1,800 is about the, is a portion of scraping the bare minimum of those tasks to do those do that work. Let's move on to next slide, please. So, as you probably all know, pipes and conduits are probably the most numerous type of encroachment we see. And for those projects, really the inspector does play an outsized role in a successful completion or construction of those. Not that they're building it themselves, but there are a lot of crucial elements to those types of projects for excavation, checking the materials being used for backfill, the backfill method, leak testing, making sure all those things are done in accordance with Title 23 can really make a project be successful or not. And we have a wide range of applicants with those pipe crossings, whether it's a large utility, a small scale farmer. It really runs the gambit of different skill sets and the contractor skill sets that that's part of the reason why that is a notch above most of the other costs for the small scale and linear utilities there. Obviously, we're still trying to reflect larger scale project, lower scale, so you have those differences in poles and a few others. And then, of course, the public works and structures down below. Those are generally larger projects the fees reflect. Most of those are multi-year projects through flood seasons. Have false work in the streams. Like, we're checking on those projects a lot, and as board member Bosler said, like that is time sunk into these projects to make sure they aren't deviating from what was approved. Okay, next slide, please. And then also, again, at the bottom, we have our project authorizations. So minor alteration requests from Section 6E of our regulations and minor maintenance request concurrences. Those are a little bit less than the permitted activities. However, a field visit is still a field visit, and it's impossible to calculate and get to the third decimal point on a distance from office and all the time associated with that. But so we have to find some medium based on our past experience for these. So this reflects that. Okay, next slide, please. And just to circle, Mr. Valines was ahead of me a little bit on the timing of these payments, but I wanted to touch on this before we pause. So currently we have two potential times for payment in our current fee schedule. The application fee is due when the application is submitted, right? We don't go very far in the review process until the fee is tied to the application. That is the same, and it would be a base fee of $1,000 with that application. We wouldn't really move very far forward without that payment. And then currently the regulations say that the construction inspection fee is due prior to permit issuance, right? And so some applicants choose to just pay it all up front and just get things going as fast as they can and not have any, maybe undue delay because of a delayed payment. That can still be the case. The only difference is that full balance of the permit application review fee would also be due at that prior to issuance. So, so again, the applicant will know what the full cost, both permit application review and the construction inspection fee, are at the time of application. They have the option to pay it all right at the front, or the balance of the permit review fee and construction inspection fee prior to the issuance, right? Please.
Through the chair.
Yes, Mr. Valines.
Thank you. So would there ever be, I guess what I'm trying to ask is, let's say you have all those costs up front. Would there ever be a time where you're like, it didn't quite take everything we thought, so there might be money coming back? Or, wow, this took a lot longer than we thought, and there's gonna be money there. I guess what I'm trying to get at, let's just say somebody goes through the process, they're like, wait, I don't want a higher bill. Have you factored that in?
I believe we came, I think the team might have to help me out a little bit on this.
I
But
mean, I'm asking hypothetical, so don't waste too much
right.
time on it,
Well,
but
and-
just generally speaking.
And of course, we're considering those situations, right? Mr. Lamb has 1,000 data points to say that's going to work, that's not going to work.
Yeah.
And we have to find some happy medium that's going to be the majority of the cases. But in general, the base fee is non-refundable.
Yeah.
That's that. I can't recall off the top of my head where the cutoff is for that balance. I mean, we want to have the rest, and we're still wrestling a little bit with when that second payment would be due. But at this point, we're proposing to have it prior to permit issuance. So yes, there could be a sunk cost that they get right to the end and they say, no, never mind. But of course, a permit fee is part of a project overall cost, right? They have to consider all that as part of their whole thing. And the best we can do is show them up front, this is what it is. It's
Yeah.
not going to move forward until those things are met. Be clear.
Okay, great, thank you.
Sure.
Good point. Member Bosler?
We talked about how many of the projects, are both Army Corps and Central Valley Flood Board, and so in some cases, we have both entities doing construction, essentially the same construction inspection. Is there any possibility of thinking about how to streamline that?
That's a good question, and I was planning on touching more on inspections soon. No, but it's perfect timing because yes, there and we're well aware from the association's perspective. There are a lot of inspections that happen on the flood control system. What I can tell you is that the Corps does not have an inspection role. Not that they don't have authority, but they do not have a staff that is out for encroachment inspections. Right, that is the board's role, and we are
Talking about construction,
construction of what?
flood improvements.
Okay, yes, flood improvements. Yes, we'll discuss that with the system improvement portion. Yes, correct. Okay.
If our staff had authority over the time a 408 process would take, it would be wonderful.
Right.
I guess what we can do is just press
Right.
on, maybe for some things that will go away.
Right. So this is the end of the construction inspection fee portion. Happy to pause for anyone's input.
Anyone? To my right? To my left? Audience? Hands up. We have one hand up from someone online, B.M. McGowan. If you would
Yes.
indicate if I said the whole name correct, that would be helpful.
My name is Barbara McGowan, and I'm the permitting and project coordinator at DCC Engineering in Walnut Grove. And I've been doing this now for about 5 years with them. And I just have a couple of comments. I'm taking a very deep breath with the proposed fees when it's for the single landowners. I'm in fear of everything that's already been done. But my biggest question is, along with the increase of costs, what is going to be put in place for the agencies to do a better communication and improve their time skills? If I'm going to pay more money, shouldn't there be some sort of milestones that can be met? And small examples, I have 3 emails out requesting information. The oldest one is a year old, and I still haven't received any comments back on a current permit I'm having process. I also have months with another permit that I've received no communication back. And there seems to be that if you're going to go ahead and increase the cost, which I'm not against, but I am very floored with the amount they're increasing to. for the individual property owner. Like hand, I think that there should be some written milestones and communication regulations in place to respond to people, because that's actually my biggest hurdle, and my community's biggest hurdle is communication. Thank you very much.
Well, that got everybody's eyebrows up. Mr. Shotbell.
I would say what I can say to this, I absolutely understand the difficulties of fee increases and how they might how they would burden the regulated community. But as for improvements, I can say we are developing that permit application portal. We've been trying to be transparent about it, and I can say also that we're baking into that application portal a status tracker so that the public knows that where they are in the overall permitting process, and it's visual, it's relatively straightforward on seeing where someone is in all of it. Is it with the Corps? Is it with us? That kind of thing. Recently, we've really had a struggle with staffing, which absolutely it can lead to longer times for responses. We are working on improving staffing and pushing those through so that there is a better response from someone. It's just that's probably one of the main concerns. So we're pulling in resources as we can for rehiring and additional help from the outside. So I can speak to that from my perspective, but I understand it's a challenge. Absolutely.
Thank you for that. It is an issue that raises awareness for sure, and a need to respond to people's requests and questions, but also there's some challenges there. So it's not being ignored, but
Correct.
It's not perfect yet.
Correct.
Thank you, Ms. McGowan. Anyone else online? Hands up. Okay. Then are you still on, Mr. Shotbell?
I am. That's the end of the construction inspection fees.
Okay.
We'd be moving on to routine inspections after this. Okay. Okay. The third of our existing fees that are proposed to be updated. So the inspection section at the board was created around 2018. That was also the time that we were developing the fees for the first time. Routine inspections had not been a integral component of the boards up to that point. And I want to expand on some of the reason for this in addition to the proposed fees that are shown here. We've been working on the routine inspection program for about 6 months now internally. My inspection staff and me have been developing this program, and it had been based on the frequency of newer permits that were issued that are subject to these routine inspections. As soon as 2 years for pipe testing at the time, up to 5 and 10 years for a brand new encroachment that was built correctly. We're going to come back and look at that bridge or that encroachment to make sure that it's still in compliance, right? That's the foundation of the routine inspection for this. We've mentioned before, there are lots of inspections on the levees. One of the main ones you see every January is DWR coming to you with their annual inspection report. Comprehensive inspection report for state plan and flood control facilities, which is huge book, a lot of responsibility, a ton of work goes into that. The focus for that report in general, it's not to minimize it, but it is for the board and the public's knowledge of how LMAs are maintaining the facility, maintaining the system, right, that they are in charge of, right? They still look at encroachments on those, but that's not their focus. They are grading how that system is being maintained so that we can identify those problem areas where they're spending money. LMAs fundamentally are not regulating encroachments. That's generally the board's job, right? So they're not pulling up a permit to say, is this pipe permitted, and checking all the paperwork. That is on us, and frankly has not been integral part of our program, but we've recognized that dearth and that need there. And hence, that's kind of where the routine really should be called routine encroachment inspection fees, right? You have a permit. Are you still in compliance with that permit? And I'll even add on for the core inspections, right, that happen in conjunction with the state and locals for their reports. That is a top to bottom encroachments. They don't care who owns it. They want to make sure that all these pieces are part of it. We provide the data for them, the permits, their LOPs, all the things that say, yes, this thing's fine, or it was inspected on this date, that kind of thing. The point of the routine encroachment inspection fees is to help provide that data for that program, both for Title 23 as well as for the Corps' needs. And that's all to feed into the PL 8499 and stay eligible, right? We've had those issues with the errant polls and paperwork issues. A DWR inspection may identify something that's not in our books, but the board is the one to carry that through to resolve that conflict, right? So the point of these routine inspections are to resolve those before they come in front of the Corps and before they become an issue that the board that may have an implication for PLA 499 eligibility. So with that said, that is the point of the routine inspection program and the fees that go along with that. Like I said, we've had about 6 months of experience now of, it's been 5 years since this thing was permitted. We got to go take a look at it now and make sure that it's still in compliant, right? And again, part of that can be as simple as maybe it's a fence or something really simple on a landowner's property that's close to a levee. But did they build 5 things in the meantime that they didn't tell us about, right? It's our chance to check in. It's a very unique program because it's us trying to be proactive as opposed to something's drastically wrong, come take a look at this, board resolve it. So it's trying to head that off. That being said, hopefully I'm not feeling coming off as defensive, but the frequency for that, I think we need to look harder at in terms of, just because it's 5 years, is this the best usage of staff time to look at that one thing that it's clearly in compliance with, but we have to drive to Bakersfield to figure that out, or how do we leverage our time to best make sure all these things are in compliance? That's the challenge, right? With limited staff, with limited resources. So I think that those are some of the things we're going to look at closer with this program. All that being said, here are the proposed fees for these types of encroachments. Oh, you can go back.
Can
that
you
table down below.
Can you help us understand how it works today? So do you go and inspect and then you send the bill for $500? Because this isn't something that the permitted community is asking for.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just don't know how it's working today.
So today what happens is, so you get your construction inspection done, and at the end of that construction, we are kind of closing out the books on that project, and we put basically a recommended next inspection date in our files to say, okay, look at this in 5 years, right? And then we pull our database and we see what's on the calendar for coming up. Okay, it's been 5 years for this encroachment. We will send a 90-day, what we call a 90-day letter. It's just a notification letter that's saying, hey, it's coming up. We're going to go out and see it. And here's the associated current fee schedule of $500 for that service. The output of that is either, hey, here are some corrections that need to be made, or a verification letter saying, you're doing great. Here's proof that you're still good, and we'll see you in another 5 or 10 years or whatever that might be. So that's the current situation right now. But again, it doesn't mean that we can't be a little more strategic about how those projects are evaluated, whether it's just the time, that's always the bearing piece of it, or if there's some other factors that we can look into that. But that is the current status for this, and that's what our current regulations require.
And that's a $500 fee currently?
$500
And
fee
you
currently.
advise them of that, and how's
Correct.
how's their collection going?
It is generally good, but I will say what we learned, the biggest thing we've learned so far is the challenge is getting in touch with the permittee, right? 5 years goes by, emails change, phone numbers change, owners can change, right? We don't have covenants on everything, but really my staff is like, how do we find this person, right? And that speaks to the, well, I won't go down that path, but the effectiveness of that permit in the long run, that kind of thing. So hopefully that answers your question. Sorry.
Well, it may be mine, but Vice President Valines and then Mr. Countryman. Vice President Valines.
Thank you. So is anybody locally able to check that in terms of something they're already doing their own work? Or is it's, if we're sending someone to Bakersfield, to use your example, it's just us, number one. Number two, I assume this would cost more, maybe way in the future be okay, but what about can you use a drone? Or can you do anything to minimize time
Right.
to do that? Or even you made a really good point I hadn't thought about. You can't even reach folks maybe, but let's say you could, in this example, take a picture and show us what it is. I'm just trying to kind of get a sense of what that is.
We absolutely do. We leverage, if we have a relationship with them and we get what we need through a local picture, and there's some level of trust and not just we're taking it of getting off the internet and throwing it to you. Of course, absolutely. We realize the time sink that might be, and so we try to leverage. But again, it goes back to who's on the other end of the phone, who's answering, and are they acting in good faith? We're trying to get that compliance to the lowest level. Absolutely.
I could do a little FaceTime.
Right. Yeah.
That answers that. Mr. Countryman? Are you unmuted? We're ready to hear your voice.
Hear me all right?
No, I can hear you.
Okay. Well, my question was pretty much the same as Mike's. I was wondering, if there's things that we could notify the districts if they could send us a video of whatever the item is that we could inspect. To save our guys from having to drive out there, like you say, to Bakersfield. Something do you ever do that kind of thing?
We can, and we do when we can. I think it speaks to continuing relationships with LMAs and our different groups. So I know Zubair Dosu's group has a lot of close relationships with a lot of the LMAs for PLA 499. So we might ask internally and see what we can leverage there. Absolutely. Of course, it's always a trade-off of their time, are they available, that kind of thing. But all options are on the table. Local photos, local support, whether it's the LMA or the permittee themselves, we absolutely leverage.
Through the chair.
Thank you.
Does that answer that, Mr. Countryman?
Yes. Yes, that's good.
Okay, great. Member Grego?
So we've heard it mentioned about private property owners versus, reclamation districts. Is there a way to subdivide local property owners in regards to this issue as a certain fee versus an agency? And the reason, I don't know, I'm sure that there's probably some legal aspect that we have to go through in order to do that. But I would see that a private property owner, it would be a little bit tough on them to have to, double the cost of an inspection fee. It's just something for thought and trying to get compliance from them, whether they're going to provide you a photo or not, but I'm just wondering if that's possible.
I think the way we have approached this has been always downstream of what that permitting action is, right? If we decided early on that the action that needed to happen, maybe by an LMA, needed to be a permit for whatever those project details are, we're downstream of that. And again, I think there's still some program flexibility on how we view that. LMAs are partners, right? We're not there to shake anyone down or whatever. It's to get compliance, make sure the system's doing what it needs to do. So, I'll leave it there. That's what we'd look into.
Yeah, and I agree. We're not here to make a profit. We're just trying to meet the services that are being acquired. And what I'm hearing from you all is that these are not even meeting. The proposed increases are not meeting. And I guess my question is, what percentage is not being met? Is it 10%? Is it 15%? I mean, that really, for me, being, gone through this with special districts or the county or another agency, I see that we need to have an escalator on these fees connected to the CPI, or every 3 years look at a correction to see where we're at in regards to construction standards and how they're pricing. I think that we've put ourselves in a bind. The legislature wants us to cover our fees so that we're not reliant on the general fund, and I agree with that. However, because these fees have never been increased or there's no mechanism to do so, it's put this board and our staff in a position where, our customers are looking at us like, that's pretty big, But once we get a baseline established with all the things that are associated with that, with the increases or corrections that we do every few years, then we'll be in a better place. It's just the huge increases that are going to be tough to swallow for our customers, so to say.
Well, thankfully, that is part of the presentation too, to address exactly what you're talking about with future increases, to make it more palatable, both for, palatable, but more efficient for future increases or needs.
Small increases are more durable than these large increases we're seeing today.
Yeah.
But I know that there's a need for it, so.
Right. Absolutely.
Here's who I'm going to call upon. Member Andrews, Mr. Engler, Ms. Buckley. Member Andrews.
Thank you. I have a question which stems directly from my lack of familiarity with the routine inspection program. So pardon me if this is a terribly ignorant question, but it seems to me if you're doing inspections every 5 years, are there districts that you're going out to inspect or properties where, every 5 years, things are not changing? There are. Okay.
Sorry, I was just nodding
Okay.
to listen, but our routine inspections are permit-based, right? So we're not going out for full districts, a full sweep of something. It is, this permit we issued in 2018 is now up for an inspection. We're going to look at that one thing, make sure they're good, move on. Of course, there can be gains by saying, okay, these two are next to each other, we'll wait till the next week and get them both, or something like that. But it's relatively small scale and pretty direct for that permit.
Okay, and is there any correlation between the type of permit, type of encroachment being permitted, and how often that routine inspection was worthwhile in terms of turning up problems?
I don't have any data that's significant to show you that something has been different for one of the others. We are in the zone right now. I can say for pipes as an example, they are the outlier in terms of the Corps has specific 5-year needs for pressure or otherwise video inspecting for those pipes that need to happen every 5 years. So that's a federal requirement we are not in control of, yet we are responsible for. So that is the one that is the most crucial out of all of them, not just for the safety and performance of that encroachment, but for regulatory and our requirements.
So there may be some different types of permits besides pipes where you might say, we look at this and typically we only find a problem, once every 10 or 15 years.
Right.
I'm just looking for ways to not have people dinged every 5 years, $500.
Agreed,
And staff time to be spent on something that's not productive.
1,000%.
Just in the interest of efficiency.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page for that. We
Yeah.
can be smarter about that and not just say, well, it's been 5 years, let's go walk the walk and everything, so.
Thank you.
Just from my perspective, that's a pretty good interchange between the two of you that ought to be transcribed and attached to the
Thank you.
the regulations. Mr. Engler.
Thank you, President Dolan. So this is one of the areas that really kind of gives me and our membership some heartburn, and it's just difficult. I'm not aware of any other fee that we pay in any other government or any other permit we receive that we pay ongoing fees over the life of the project, right? You pay construction inspection, you pay upfront for the permit and the initial inspection, so on and so forth. This would be the only one that the board could decide they're going to come back every 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, whatever it may be. And the way it works is we received this for a pipe we put in for a property owner back in 2019. You get a 90-day letter saying we need to see your pipe inspection, so you need to video inspect your pipe, and you need to send us $500 so we can come look at your pipe. This is after the DWR inspections that happen twice a year. On top of that, we're required by our O&M manuals as LMAs to inspect another 2 times a year. The state's utility crossing inventory program inspects all of the utilities that cross levees every 2 to 3 years, and they do a pretty detailed inspection of those. We're getting video inspections that say these pipes are in good shape in some cases, and they don't need to be inspected again for 10 to 20 years. Yet right now we've got to do it every 5 years. So at a minimum, we need to look at frequency, but a better way might be to just increase the initial permit fee and get rid of the ongoing inspection fees altogether. It just seems like it's problematic. It's something that kind of, if I'm a property owner, then putting a pipe through a levee and you're going to ding me every 5 years for having this pipe through the levee, I'm probably not going to replace my pipe. I'm probably not going to bring it up to current standards. I'm going to continue to patch it, put Band-Aids on it, so on and so forth, and then we're not going to improve our system because these property owners are going to be a lot less willing to do this. So those are some of the comments we had on these ongoing fees, and just wanted to raise those issues here. Thank you.
All right, I always take a board member before someone else. Mr. Valines.
Thank
Then
you.
we have someone online. Ms. Buckley is declining.
Okay, thank you. What if, when we kicked around the idea, if we were to work with, we were using the Bakersfield example, but what about like what you said, that, if you're already doing this inspection, you have a video and you just send it to us and we check it out, would that be something that works from your perspective and not have to do, let's say, the fee?
We're already requiring it in the permit conditions, so it's something that they're supposed to provide a copy of the video inspection every 5 years to the board and LMA so that we have those available for the course. So that's already a condition of the pipe crossings through levees. Most of these encroachments, the LMAs know when somebody's changing something, know when somebody's doing work, and if we think it's an issue, we're going to call the board. Are you going to send an inspector out, or are you going to send somebody from your enforcement group out, or are they the same person? I don't know. Those are the things. And then the last thing on this is, if you send me a letter as a private encroachment holder saying we need to come inspect your private encroachment, and I say no, what happens? How do you enforce that? Right? Do you still go do the inspection? Do you do it without collecting the fee? And then, is there an enforcement action available for people that refuse to pay these? So there's a lot of potential issues with this portion of the program, and I think it's something that could be really, you could capture these fees right up front as part of the overall permit fee process and know that it's going to support ongoing costs.
Thank you. No other board member handouts. Okay. Ms. Emily Papalardo, did I get that right?
Perfect. Yes, you did. This is Emily again, and I really want to thank you all for the opportunity to comment today in the discussion. This is helpful. I just wanted to echo, actually, I think what Member Andrews and Valines said about potential inspection, sending a video or a picture with these private landowners with these small encroachments, and maybe that being a way to see that it's not changed. And would that still have a inspection fee associated with it? And then also thinking about a different frequency for different kinds of small encroachments. Because I'm looking at a fence and say I've permitted my fence, and it probably cost more than the fence cost itself, and so then I have to pay so much money every so often to continue to have the fence there. That's all my comments are. Thank you.
Thank you. If you were here, you'd see some nods going on, but part of why we have a workshop is so that the board can give input and we don't necessarily just okay things without this long discussion. Okay, any other input on this before we move to the next item? This is a hot topic, Mr. Shotwell. I didn't hear a lot of support for this $500 every 5 years. Okay. Well, we're already gasping on the doubling for the other one, so
Right.
maybe there's going to need to be some accommodation on this one.
We understand, absolutely. I mean, those are, we need that input, right? We're trying to be as creative as we can to cover this stuff, and because we all know why we're here, it's to be an efficient organization to meet those our standards for flood control and flood safety. So they're absolutely welcome. Yeah. So I'll leave that there.
All right. You're still
Still
you're
an
still the
Aussie, yeah.
presenter. Okay.
Yeah. So, okay. So if we are good to move on, we'd be switching over now to newly proposed fees. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, sure.
Ms. McGowan, did you still want to talk about the $500 fee? Barbara McGowan?
Okay. Oh, there it is. I apologize. I just
Are you
wanted
related to
also-
all the McGowans in Butte County?
I am not.
Okay.
Or should I be?
Maybe 3 or 4 of them.
Okay. I just wanted to real quick, I also would like the board to know how much it costs to do a video of a pipe. The current rate is $3,400 to $5,100. So if you're put that on top of all of the other costs, I even think 5 years doing that on if you're putting in brand new construction and a brand new pipe, you shouldn't have to be looking at any of this for at least 15 to 20 years. So I would like to see it expanded out, but just think it's not just your fees that get accrued. The video fee alone is astronomical, and that's at current day pricing, which has gone up about 30 to 40% over the last year. So just wanted to share that with you.
Well, you put the eyebrows up again in this room, so thank you for that information. It obviously will not be ignored. Any other hands up before I stop Mr. Shotwell and sentence again? Okay, none? All right. Next segment.
Okay.
People, there's snacks over here. There's no lunch here, but there are snacks over there. And I think after you go through this next session, we might take a break.
Thank you. Okay, so we're switching over to newly proposed fees. There's time variance requests, revision and plans, SSJDD land leases, and system improvement project fees. I'll be covering the first two, and then I'll hand it over to Ms. Buckley for the third one. Okay. Move it ahead, please. Okay. So this looks like a lot of information, but don't worry about reading too much in the blue boxes. We can cover what those mean. But we've talked about this both at the April 2024 workshop. We talked about it at our focus group. So I'll start at the top. Time variance requests in Title 23. The blanket rule is you're not allowed to construct during the flood season, right? And the flood season is defined in Title 23 from November 1st for both systems, and then ends in generally in the Sacramento system on April 15th, and July for the San Joaquin system.
The flood system didn't stop on April 1st.
Right, as we've seen, but that is what's written, and people are not allowed to continue their construction during those times. However, totally common for construction schedules to go into the flood season, and the allowance is that they come to us and ask for a variance request to work during the flood season. So, and no, it doesn't need to go to the board. It basically is it's okay for the chief engineer to approve those. But to get that approval, staff needs to take in a request. We need to evaluate the scope of work for that request, and then we pair that up and look at what the forecasted conditions are, the stream levels based on those forecasts, and come up with a recommendation for our chief engineer to sign off on whether to continue that construction work in the flood season or to pause and stay the same. So we've never charged any fees for that. And, you know, I can speak from my section and my staff's experience. You know, they are busy during the summer months for construction, right? That's when the majority happens there. Plenty of projects go past the November 1st date. Either they're wrapping up or it's a bridge that's just going to continue and, you know, with in stream work. So again, we allow it, but we are in constant communication, almost sometimes more than the construction season, because maybe they're out of the flood zone or whatever, but they have to do those requests to us. So we've made improvements to this time variance request process. It used to be, because we can only really see out 10 days, 2 weeks in advance for stream situations and forecasts. That's what you get. And every 2 weeks they request and we say yes. They request and we say, you know, yes. We've never charged any time for that. So my staff is not bored during the flood season. If it's a normal flood season where there's not actual huge flooding, they are in constant communication with those that are continuing construction during that time. So that is work and time, like everything else that has been taking resources for us. So we proposed these fees. We've created 3 tiers of fees, and they've been related to what we've recently changed. Instead of every 2 weeks, all the time, no matter what the scope of work is, that's all we're going to give you. We've changed it to different risk activities. So a low risk activity is maybe Caltrans has a bridge that they're doing some paving on it. The bridge is permitted and it may have some effect, but they're in and around the stream to do that work. But really it's low risk. They're up and out of the floodway. They're doing some maintenance or replacing a guardrail that's off to the side. They need to let us know that they're working, so the LMA knows that we know what's going on, and if flood levels are getting up high, that we keep a close eye on it. The moderate risk activities, some examples are maybe some erosion control, some short-term riprap placement, or maybe some minor excavation above the design water surface elevation. That's not, we don't like people digging in the levee, but maybe you have to replace a cap in a road that's going down 18 inches. We know that's going on, but it's a little higher risk. And then obviously the highest risk are waterside excavations, levee degradations, system improvement projects that go that are constructing cutoff walls. Like, we need to have a lot of coordination from the contractor, from the permittee, the state, and the federal government for those. So anyway, I think you get the diaspora of different types. So we proposed a tier system that takes into account that risk and the duration of that activity, right? So if you are doing a low risk activity for up to 2 weeks, just one time, say you went a little bit into the flood season, we just need to wrap it up. Hey, we'll look at it, we'll give you the approval, and that's the lowest fee, because we just need to take a look and respond to you, and that's it. I'm sorry. Let me step back. I misspoke a little bit. Low risk requests, all low risk requests would be in that tier 1, or moderate requests. They need to do that excavation on the top of the levee. It's going to be quick, in and out. That could be tier 1, right? We're just one and done. Tier 2 are those moderate risk activities that are going to continue past 2 weeks. Hey, we need a lot of time, but the work I'm doing isn't that invasive. Everything. And then tier 3 are just any high, and also in tier 2 is high risk projects that are short time. The last is just any high risk activities that continue. So the bridge that has false work and tons of lay down equipment in the channel that they can't really put it anywhere else. They have to have an evac plan, and we're just monitoring stuff the whole time. That's in that tier 3. And so the implementation of that is we're not intending to ding them every time they have a request. It would be basically every flood season we do a kind of mass call out emails to our permittees to say, flood season's coming, what's your schedule, what's happening? If you need to go into that flood season, here's your form to do the time variance request, right? And so this would piggyback on that. We would only charge them once per flood season period. It'd be one of those 3 numbers for the flood season. We're not stopping, or we're not stopping their work because of waiting for fees. But obviously we have to evaluate, okay, are you doing it for 2 weeks now, or do you think you're going to be in the channel the whole season? So that's going to get you in the right tier. You pay it once, and we will continue to process those TVRs through the season. There may be 5, there may be, in San Joaquin, it can go a long time. But yes, we'll keep an eye on it. They are good. That fee is paid. So it would be once at the beginning of the flood season for the payment, or when their first request comes through, right? It could be the middle of January and they need to do some cleanup work. Maybe that's their first request. So hopefully I didn't lose you on that piece, but.
Through the chair.
Yes, ma'am. Member Grego.
So I've been watching a project, I see it every day, and I'd like to know if you would tell me which tier it would be, and that's the Marysville Ring Levee. What tier would that fall into? Because I've seen a lot of construction through the winter on, securing that levee for the work that had been done prior to that. So where would that be, or if it would be on a tier?
That would absolutely be a tier 3, but we discussed, I believe, Mike, you want to speak to that?
Just with Mike Salas with board staff, I would just initially say that activities of the federal government for federal projects don't fall into the categories for time variance requests.
Yeah, that is an Army Corps project. And so they would be subject to that tier 3?
No, they would not be subject to submitting any time variance requests.
We don't get any money from them, huh?
Why not? You still are spending your time out there, right? Or are you participate in that?
I think it'll cover it in the system improvement portion of the presentation. So yes, this is geared towards encroachment permits, not the system improvement ones where we have large scale alterations to the system. Sure. Okay, is this a pause? This is all I have for time variance requests, so
Oh,
we can
so
pause
then
on
there's
that.
a subject matter after this? Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break.
Wait,
Sorry?
Oh, I just wasn't
No, we're
sure.
not.
So
Member Bartlett.
every time there was a 2-week extension, there would be another fee? I just wasn't clear on that.
No.
Okay.
One time.
Just a one time.
Okay, one time.
Right.
Madam Chair. I know you want to do a
Lyons?
quick break.
No,
but,
I'm ready to stay here till 5.
I'm not usually the one keeping us late. What do we think, on this, what's just a general number of projects that this might be? Is this like 20 projects? Is it 200 projects? I'm just kind of trying to figure out, a $200 fee might just be more frustrating for somebody than helpful to us. So unless there's a scale or something, I'm just curious.
I would say rough thought. I'm thinking of the Excel sheet that we track and everything. It's probably about 50 projects a year or so that are continuing work on average. And it obviously can go up and down, not all simultaneous, but it's quite a bit, I'd say. And we spread that work between our different sections and who has the most, project knowledge and bandwidth to do it. So, yeah.
If I could add on to that, if you don't mind.
Oh, Mr. Salazar.
Yeah, it also depends on what type of encroachment it is and who needs to do it, and if it's a high risk of failure. If they I'm thinking of PG&E when I'm saying this. If PG&E needs to replace a pole, they're not going to wait until the end of flood season to replace an emergency pole, that kind of thing. So it kind of depends on that kind of situation.
If it's an emergency pool, why wouldn't they just put it up?
Well, it's an emergency for PG&E's perspective.
Well,
They still need to go
yeah,
through
and probably their clients, if they're losing power. I don't know. If you had a pole that fell in Big Chico Creek, I don't think they would even tell you. I think they'd just put it up because we're all yelling at them. This is one I just don't get. I think it's because I don't get that there is a defined flood season now. You know, how do you define that? Okay, so it's November 1st, so we're going to go look. Well, it hasn't rained in the last 3 months, and Channel 3 tells us it's not going to until New Year's. So you have to go out and look. You have to do calculate. This is one I don't get. So I'm going to tell you I don't like it so far.
Understood. We go with what's in the regulations.
But I'll look at this again. You have 34 slides and this big thing that I only read twice. So we'll talk in between. So will everyone else. And I have great sympathy for our folks who have talked about that single home and the further inspections. I have one of those. No one else comes out. I mean, I'm not in the flood zone at all, but no one from the city comes out and looks at that. I wouldn't let them in. Probably why they avoid me. Okay. Are we ready to take a 10-minute break here?
For the transcript,
No?
that was
Did I
President
see
Dolan.
someone else? All right. Mr. Leaf appropriately asked me, tells me I need to ask for public comments. Any of you here want to talk? No one wants to stop this break. Do I have any more hands up? 10-minute break. I can see there'll be no complaints that this went longer than 10 minutes because everybody's still talking to each other. That gavel was the board's reconvening after what Mr. Knapp calls the Dolan 10 minutes. But we needed it, in my opinion, I did. Okay. We are still with Mr. Shopbell, and I don't know what your next slide number is. I think it's 20.
I believe we're on slide
22?
19.
19. Oh, I was already at 22, so I gotta go back. All right. Mr. Shopbell.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you. Okay. So picking up where we left off, the last newly proposed fee that I wanted to speak to you about today was revision and plans. I think this is the most simple and straightforward one that we've discussed so far. It encompasses the review and approval of minor and relatively insubstantial changes to the permit, to what was approved during the permit process. Title 23 has a process for these under Section 18B, and it requires a review and chief engineer's acceptance of those changes. So this is separate of a change that is large enough that would need to go back to the board for approval. There can be minor changes in design that don't affect the conditions that are in the permit or the intended use and ultimate risk to the adopted plan of flood control. So that's where we're talking about here. This would be per request. So a project could have changes over multiple years, but each one of those results in staff analyzing it, doing a brief report to the chief engineer evaluating it as well, and giving the thumbs up or thumbs down for the change, and then recording those changes in the as-built and following up on them. So relatively straightforward. These are relatively rare, I would say, overall, but the fact of the matter is it is a kind of above and beyond the normal construction inspection oversight activities for that work. I will stop there.
Can you give an example?
An example, I would say a irrigation pipe that may have an angle bend that is farther, because of the existing conditions of digging up the old pipe and putting in the new one, the angle needed to change, right? So the plans change a little bit. It's really not affecting the fact that you have a pipe crossing the levee, but we've evaluated it and it looks like a good design and we're okay with that. we update the as-bills and we move on. That's the first one I can think of.
Another example could be if there's a grading plan that needs to be changed, very minor change in the slope of whatever the finished construction is. So it's a very minor change, doesn't affect the project at all.
Okay, thanks. Is that why our deputy executive officer was encouraging you to talk?
I can't speak for our DEA, but yeah, we for system improvement projects we encounter these revisions.
No, I can see that
yeah,
happens. Yeah.
because these projects are larger and over a longer time span.
Right. Okay. Board member have any questions, input on that? Looking to my right, looking to my left. Mr. Countryman has had his hand up or not? Any of our wonderful members sitting in chairs? Mr. Engler, no? Okay.
I would like to add one last thing to.
I see you brought your backup. Okay.
Very
Mr.
much like
Chapo.
time variance requests. These are very time sensitive, right? They might find something during construction, so
They could be
staff
like-
has to act. They're dropping their,
Right.
dropping their priorities to make sure that we respond timely for these. So they are very important. Take some intense review and response. So
Is this generally something that's unexpected?
generally, yeah, we try to. I think everyone tries to avoid it if they can. Yeah.
Well, yeah, costs them too to change
Yeah.
it, as well as us, okay. Okay, I got the audience, I got online, I got the board. So, who's up next?
I will turn it over to Andrea Buckley for SSJDD.
Andrea Buckley, Deputy Executive Officer. I'm going to be addressing fees related to the Sacramento and San
here it is.
Joaquin Drainage District, property management. This is a new fee. We currently have authority to charge fees for SSJDD management, but we don't have a structure yet set up for that. So this would be a look at what we're proposing. The new fees would be for the execution of temporary entry permits, licenses, and conveyance of real property rights to the SSJDD from external. So our analysis factor in loaded rates of right-of-way agents, DWR geomatics or survey support, that we rely on our partners at DWR for some of those subject matter expertise, as well as legal review and environmental hazmat reviews for those purposes. A couple of caveats to the proposed fees. Projects related to early implementation projects such as Three Rivers, Levee Authority, or other flood control or federal projects that we have existing funding agreements or project partnership agreements in place, those would be excluded from the conveyance portions, as well as we are considering transactions related to tribal governments, so access to ancestral lands for traditional practices, or perhaps even conveying a cultural easement for access to a site of particular concern. We're making considerations for exemption from those purposes. You can see the table of the breakdown of the proposed fees for each category. The licensing includes execution of the new license as well as an annual fee. It's rent essentially on property owned and fee by the board that has that specific purpose, as well as if any amendments to the existing licenses require some level of review, particularly legal review for those change in language for existing licenses. Those licenses are revocable, so they have that ability still, as opposed to the conveyances, which are a permanent real estate right. Let's see. There was a small error on the staff report where we had it listed as 1,000, but it's actually $1,100 for TEP and licenses. So I wanted to make that correction here. Any questions about the SSJDD property management fee?
Board members, to my right, looking at this big screen. To the left, Mr. Countryman have a hand up. A license would be at obtaining use of the SSJDD land.
Obtaining use of property owned by the SSJDD in fee for encroachment. Those are pretty rare. We only have a couple in the system right now. Usually they're for pumps from land side to water side or water side to land side for example, Sigma-related activities, but the property owned on the riparian is owned by the board. So it's placement of those facilities on SSJDD property without conveying a permanent right.
No, they don't want to convey permanent right.
Generally, no.
It's our land, okay. And I don't see any nods or hands up from the board.
Well,
Oh.
I'm trying to visualize what the temporary entry permits, like what that would be for, like what.
So,
This is Member Bosler.
so we do get temporary entry requests. Sometimes the public wants to utilize our property to access their property in a different capacity. Like in some cases, they're installing a pool, but it's easier to go through our property than going through their yards. We've done that, or scientific terrestrial surveys. We've done temporary entry for a year. We give them some time. They're not super short term. They're generally minimum of a year to undertake the activity that they would like to access, and it provides us with that liability coverage and an understanding of what's going on the property.
Are the cattle that are on an SSJDD, is that a license?
Those are the cattle. We do have a couple of grazing leases. So those
Leases.
those go through a competitive bid process to Department of General Services. So
Okay,
that's
no
a separate process.
favoritism on that one, okay. I remember talking with you about a couple that did occur. We like them, they keep the weeds down, right? Maybe.
Maybe. Cattle also cause quite
I-
a bit of damage to sometimes the levee slope.
They
So
can.
that's something we have to be conscientious of as well.
Audience in the room? No? Okay. Barbara McGowan, online?
Thank you. I have a question. A person's property that has your easement going through it, does that mean to cross that easement to put in a new dock? Is that included in what you're speaking about?
No. So the process for the application for an encroachment across the board's easement is our encroachment permit process.
Okay.
This only relates to property held in fee, not encumbered by a SSJDD easement.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you for the question. Anyone else online? No hands up? No that? Okay, next subject matter then.
So our next presenters, Mr. Harvey and Mr. Zalazo will be presenting the system-wide, the system improvement project fee proposal. And I will turn it over to Mr. Harvey.
Well, they just put their heads together to try to figure out who's going first. Mr. Harvey?
Who's on first?
I am.
Hopefully this is going to work. Good afternoon. It's afternoon, right?
It
Yes.
is almost noon 30.
President Dolan, members of the board, Greg Harvey, Flood System Improvement Branch Manager. And today I'm going to be leading this presentation. Mr. Zalazo can add on and elaborate where I don't do such a good job to this presentation. And this is to charge for fees that we haven't charged in the past and recuperate our costs for, large flood modification projects. So projects where this board issues permits for, and ultimately, hopefully improve the flood system, but in turn, tear into the state federal levee system, add levee height, add 50 to 100-foot deep seepage cutoff walls, add new levees, levee setbacks, all sorts of projects. So these are intended to recuperate a portion of our costs. We've come to find out that over some examples that these projects that we've done in the past, they're anywhere from $30,000 to $80,000 over the course of many years, between meetings, board meetings, meeting with the applicants, the permit, from pre-application meeting through permit issuance, and then beyond with project closeout, some construction oversight, project closeout, O&M duties. So to be consistent with other state agencies, we felt that by basing the fee off total project costs was a good route to go. So for projects up to costing up to $10 million, the base fee would be approximately or would be $30,000, and then the next 20 million, so from 10 million to 30 million, would be a fee. The cost would be based on 0.05%, and as the project gets more expensive, that percentage goes down. So we have a graph that represents that nicely next. The next 30 million, so from 30 to 60 million, it's 0.03%. And then the following 40 million up to 100 is 0.025%. And then we also would like to propose a cap. So over $100 million for a total project cost, it would be assessed at 0.02%. But if you have a $300 million project, the fee gets pretty high, and so we would like to cap that at approximately 65,000, which we feel is 65 to 70,000. And again, this is trying to recuperate all the staff costs over the life of these projects. So all of engineering, all of environmental, all of legal, and when I say all of, it's a portion. When we some of these projects that were implemented 5 years ago, they're still going on, and we're still not doing a ton of work, but we're still involved helping the project with closeout phase. And so they do last a long time. And so as we all know, the reason why we're here, we're trying to recuperate our cost and get off the general fund as much as we can. And this is our proposal. Next slide, please.
I know you say that we're trying to get off. We've been directed to do the best that we can to not have these costs covered by the general fund.
Yes, thank you for the clarification.
I don't think we would have done it otherwise.
So this graph kind of represents what I just went over, starting at the initial 30,000, and then the next 20 is at the 0.05%. And as you can see, the line flattens out as the total project gets more expensive. The fee rate declines. Next slide, please. So what goes into total project cost? This was also something that we discussed and tried to figure out. And from start to finish, what does it take to build these projects from the very beginning, through the end? So you have, California and federal, environmental regulations and requirements, CEQA and NEPA that you have to do. You have, mitigation and, the regulatory, permitting aspect, and then of course the construction costs, relocations. So a lot of these, not all, but a lot of these large flood modification projects require a lot of relocations of existing encroachments. Some of them have permits, some of them don't, some of them need to be moved. There's a lot of work that goes into that. And so that cost would be incorporated into this, into this fee. So we wouldn't be charging extra fees as we went along. The cost for our staff to review, real estate documents and, process those, that would be included in here. So this is what we have for that. I'm sure there'll be some discussion on this, but this is what we propose. And so next slide, please. So this just gives a snapshot of what goes into it, what our staff do to issue a permit and then beyond with the construction and closeout, from the pre-application meeting and the intake and the compliance and completion of the review of the application. A lot of these big projects, they have cutoff walls. They require a separate safety assurance review panel from the Army Corps that we're involved in, and a lot of them have, when we submit them down to the Army Corps for review, they go to the district level and the division and sometimes headquarters. So there's a lot of coordination with the Army Corps. Any in-kind credit requests or, we meet, a lot of times we meet monthly or bi-monthly with the applicant along the way just to make sure we're all on the same page and everything is going as quickly as possible. We say that with a grain of salt because I know sometimes these take a long time for regulatory review. And the issuance of the permit, the briefings we do to the board periodically. A lot of these big projects are, great accomplishments, and so keeping the board and the public abreast of what's going on, and the creation of the staff report and the permit issuance, and then the construction monitoring afterwards. There wouldn't be any additional construction inspection fees or anything like that. That's what Preston had talked about earlier. And then, next slide, please. I think we have some examples. So these are just some examples of how, so a $20 million project would have the $30,000 fee, and then the next 10 million is charged at the 0.05%, so 5,000. So this would be 35,000, and then for same with the $50 million project, that would be the approximate fee.
Mr. Vines?
Thank you. And what is it at now?
What is what now?
Currently, so it's at zero. That's
Zero.
what I was asking.
New fee.
Yeah, we don't, so all this is,
Got it.
yeah.
Thanks.
This is what we're proposing. Thank you.
Okay.
And what I didn't mention, I think we had on a slide before, is the deposit. So we were contemplating or suggesting that we do a two-phase. So at the beginning, when the application comes in to get board staff rolling and work through the process, a $15,000 deposit. And then as the project gets closer to permit issuance, you have a better idea of what the mitigation costs are and what the construction costs are. And we could work with the applicant and get a better idea of a total project cost. And then we could base the remaining fee off of that before permit issuance. And then next slide. These are just two other examples, an 80 and a $110 million project, what the fees would be. We have one last slide. Yes, President Dolan?
Oh, expressive face, right? I've been told that before. So if it's U.S. Army Corps of Engineers funded, designed, and implemented, this does not apply,
Correct.
even though we have some kind of role.
That is correct.
All right, because
Yeah.
sending an invoice to the federal government is not going to happen. So if it's one of the flood control associations, does it apply?
It applies to large-scale system modifications. So Bear River setback levy would be the Mid-Valley levee improvement projects, Lower Elkhorn Basin, Lookout Slough, large-scale projects that we work on for many, many years and have a ton of staff time into those to help recuperate some of our costs.
Okay. Thank you for that. Anything except the federal government?
Correct.
All right. And, all right.
Yeah. So currently, if we can, we don't have a fee structure for these, like Mr. Valines pointed out. And so sometimes if we can relate it to a dam and flow control structure, we have an existing $7,000 fee for that. So our time for, 4 years working on this that's the fee we would charge for that. And then this is just a wrap-up slide with the $15,000 deposit at the time of application and the remainder before permit issuance. And the two-payment process versus, I guess, the one right now. A lot of the smaller encroachments at the beginning, when they submit their application, they submit for the entire thing up front.
Those are your slides?
Those are my slides.
That's your
President Dolan.
information. We have what is written that was sent to us last week as well. Board members have questions, inquiries, input? To my right? Member Bosler?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of these projects that would, at least some projects would be ones that even are being taken on by DWR, correct?
Yes, where
Yeah.
the applicant would be DWR.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I think it's just one thing that's sort of been there's been an oversight about the role and responsibilities that this board has, or maybe it's been intentionally said, but the general fund's going to support that. But in the face of direction, but I do want to go back to like how specific the direction has been, but I haven't been in all, I don't, because I can't find a lot of like record of the direction from the legislature except for the 2018 supplemental report language. So, that's an aside, but I do think it makes sense for all these large projects for there to be some allowance or thought around all of the costs associated with it. I think that, when we do these large-scale projects, they're not exempt from permitting, so there is costs that are borne by the state, and right now it's the general fund, and so it makes sense for these costs to be recouped by the project in some form or fashion, just like many other costs in state government that are related to things that the state is implementing, like Caltrans or others. So I think it's a fair acknowledgement of the work that's being done here that is required for the permits.
Thank you. Member Grego.
Okay, thank you. I just want to ask one more time for the record. Sometimes you got to hear it 3 times, okay? And so the Corps of Engineers is exempt from paying on these projects. So I'm going to use an example. So Three Rivers would have been charged under this scenario, but the ring levy would not be charged. Is that correct?
Yeah, the federal projects have project partnership agreements with the state where, I hope I get this percentage right, I think it's 65-35. So
Right.
Yeah, so the federal government pays 65% and the state pays the remaining
But
35.
on Three Rivers, there was no federal money involved in that project.
Correct.
It was state and private and local that was provided to do that. But we would be required to pay these fees, whereas the ring levy is not.
I believe you're correct.
Okay. So is there any other type of policy or regulation that prevents us from not charging someone else? I mean, is it just the core and that's it?
Yeah, because unless there was an agreement, I guess similar to the project partnership agreements we have with the federal government, if there was already some sort of pre-existing agreement, then maybe not.
Okay. All right, thank you.
All right. Member Johnson.
I'll save most of my remarks and comments for feedback to the very end, but I'll just say I agree with Board Member Bosler about the general thing here, and this is all very hard, but I appreciate the way that you're thinking about how to make the fees align with the costs, which is a more fair way to do it and something that we need to try to do.
This room got very quiet all of a sudden. Mr. Engler? Does Joe have his hand up? Okay. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you, President Dolan, members of the board, Tom Engler again, MBK Engineers here on behalf of the Flood Control Association. So I'm going to reiterate for the record that our counsel, Scott Shapiro, has been in front of you numerous times on the disconnect between flood system improvement projects and the board's fee structure. All of these projects are to be funded, at least in some part, by the state, and many of these projects are correcting design deficiencies or bringing the existing projects up to modern standards, which is more the role of the state, not the local maintaining agencies, although the local maintaining agencies are the ones actually doing the work. We would like to officially lodge the same comments and concerns. Now, having said that, and recognizing that there's some variation of this proposal that's probably going to get approved, we have a few important comments. First, the flood system improvement fees, although they've changed since the initial report came out, the math's a little bit different, so I'll try to not throw numbers at you. But the sliding scale means that some larger projects may cost less than smaller projects, so we want to make sure that we go through the math and make sure that's not going to happen. So a $20 million project doesn't have less fees than a $10 or $5 million project. It looks like the new math corrected that, but the previous math may not have. Project cost estimates change. So I like the upfront fee and not charging costs all the way through, but one of the things we want to be real careful of is what's actually included in project costs. There's a lot of things that the board has no part of that are included in project costs, including a lot of the planning and other efforts along the way. So there's only certain portions of the project costs that we think should be included in that calculation. And then smaller projects, most of our projects, I'm going to say most of our projects moving forward, because the big urban projects like Three Rivers are for the most part winding down, or the Army Corps is constructing them through project partnership agreements. So now we're looking at rural projects. These projects are going to be in the neighborhood of 500,000 to 5 million. There's not a lot that are going to exceed 10 million. There will be a few, but the base fee of $30,000 for a $1 million project is really kind of seems a little bit high. So we're suggesting that maybe you start that scaling factor more at like 10, maybe 15,000, just to get those real small projects kind of more equitable with the bigger projects. And then maybe the scaling can be adjusted to continue to collect the fees moving forward. There's similar amounts of work on a $5 or $10 million project as a $30 million project, but there's typically less on a $1 to $5 million project than there is on those bigger ones. I'm looking through to see if there's anything else I wanted to hit on. I think that's it. So I think there's other public comments out there on this one, so I'll let you have those. And if I think of something else, I'll let you know.
Mr. Engler, you're looking at a piece of paper that I can see. Is that something that you're willing to give to us so
It
that
would-
we will know as we're looking at this before it comes forward?
It would have to be revised significantly because the numbers have changed, and
Okay.
you can see there's a lot more written there than what I've said, so
Okay.
a lot of it wouldn't apply anymore. So I can definitely, we can summarize our comments in writing if that would be helpful.
It would be helpful.
Yes,
Yes.
we can do that.
Okay, thanks. So you think there's more input here, huh?
I'd be surprised if there wasn't.
I would be as well. We don't have a large audience here, and I don't see anyone who stood up except for you. Audience? Okay, we have someone. Is this Corey Lasso? Here comes DWR.
Afternoon, Corey Lasso with DWR, working in the Flood Projects branch. So no, and I appreciate it. I understand definitely what the board staff has been doing for projects that are coming through. I guess one of the things I thought through is, to be honest, I hadn't seen this before until just hearing this now. But I'm assuming any existing projects that are out there would be exempt from this, because I'm not sure how that would play in, ones that have gone through already. And then obviously just the consideration of DWR working on behalf, many of the, I think some of the things that Greg had brought up, many of those things I'm thinking state-led projects are things that we do a lot of collaboration with the board. So I think there would be discussion and understanding on how that may play forward for some of the projects that are out there. That's all I had on it.
Oh, thank you. There's some nods here. You got one from me.
Thanks.
So we'll see. There's nuances here for sure. That's why it's not a decision today. We'd be, what? Thank you. Audience? Just like to watch us, huh? Okay. Hands up. Ms. McGowan? No, the one that
I'm here.
No.
Yep, I'm here. I'm here.
Who's here? Papalardo
Barb
or McGowan?
Barbara McGowan.
Okay, you go first. That is Papalardo. I got that
Okay.
mixed up
I
with.
just would like to reiterate what Mr. Engler said. The tiers, there's too much money. The tier's not low enough, and the $30,000 is too high. There's many reclamation districts and other projects that fall into a much lower category, and it would be an astronomical amount of money for them to spend to work. So I would just like to put that on record. Thank you very much.
You're welcome and understood. Ms. Papalardo, I'm sorry I got that mixed up. If you were here, I wouldn't. You're on.
I had the same comment, so that's it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for your comments. We like to have those so that we don't feel that we're not understanding what people's concerns are. Well, despite Mr. Engler thinking a lot of people want to talk. You think 3 is a lot, and you've been to these meetings before. Okay. All right, we got that. We've got some active ones online. I appreciate that. So last call, board members, to my right.
Is this just for this topic or for the whole?
This topic.
We'll come back.
We are on slide 27 of 34, so we're moving.
President Dolan, may I respond to?
You have a comment?
Just a question.
Mr.
a request.
Zalazo, you
Yes.
have a comment, okay.
Just a request from the association that if it has the scope of work for those smaller scale projects, please provide that so they can come up with some lower tiers for those smaller projects. That's all.
Is it the association that is to provide that information, or will staff assist?
No, it's in response to Mr. Engler's comments about they have some of the smaller projects that
Oh, I know.
the $30,000 would be too high, unreasonable. So we want to recognize that and try to come up with something that's more appropriate for those smaller scale projects.
Okay, yeah, it seems that the 30,000 percentage to the total cost is a higher percentage than is being applied to the others, so That would be one way to look at it. Unless my math is wrong. Okay, thank you for that. I don't see anybody raising hands. I don't see someone's chin going up. Any hands up? Ms. McGowan, do you have your hand up again? Which is allowed, by the way. Or did-
No, for some reason, it's automatically doing it on my computer, so I apologize to all of you.
No apology necessary. Okay, we can move on. Who's up next? Waivers, deferrals, refunds?
So next we have Chief Engineer Michael Wright to present the waivers, deferrals, and refund process that we're proposing. Michael?
This might be the popular one.
Maybe,
Wright.
we'll see. Thank you. Good afternoon, President Dolan, members of the board, Michael Wright, Chief Engineer.
Move your mic.
Yes, and I will be going over waivers.
I can't hear.
You can't hear? Let's take
Got
that
it.
on.
Got it. Thank you.
All right. I'm discussing waivers, deferrals, and refunds as they relate to our proposed fee updates today. The first is waivers. Currently, there is no adopted process to waive fees. When the original fee structure was adopted, the board was very specific in their policy and not having waivers be part of that. We have recently, not as a waiver, but as a substitution for fees, entered into funding agreements. We have one with Sacramento Area Flood Control Agency, as well as work for the Middle Mile Broadband Initiative. These are not ideal for small encroachments or private encroachments. They're more appropriate for large system improvement projects that span, multi-years. Other considerations we looked at when discussing waivers, and the first bullet is something that somewhat applies to the discussion we've just heard, but the board wears a couple hats. The board's a regulator for the State Plan of Flood Control in the Central Valley, as well as considered the owner of the State Plan of Flood Control levees and the non-federal sponsor in partnership with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for the levee system. So it's, on one side we regulate, on the other side we're owner, non-federal sponsor. So that's something we looked at as far as, the fees associated with those large system improvement projects. Yes, they're improving the board's levee system, but we are also the regulator responsible to make sure that it's done correctly. The other consideration we looked at was disadvantaged communities and whether or not we should possibly reduce fees associated with projects occurring in disadvantaged communities. That's all I have for waivers. I have a couple more slides, but I'll pause.
I do appreciate the concern for what we're now calling disadvantaged communities, but there are some that are not necessarily disadvantaged, they just don't have the tax base. Because of my least favorite act that was taken in Prop 13. Just a thought. Communities that don't have a revenue base, maybe add that to the disadvantaged as well. And I think we're going to hear from somebody that says include the single-family homeowner. Board members?
I have a quick one. Just a quick
You
one.
can take as much time as you wish,
No, it's
Mr.
a-
Vice
it's a quick
President.
one. Thank you, Madam Chair. I saw you put, disadvantaged communities, and what was the one before that? Well, whatever it was. Yeah, earlier we talked, or I think maybe I misheard, but you kicked around the idea of maybe having even tribal exclusions, and I was just curious, would that fall into this potentially as disadvantaged, or would that be one that would be waived
I
potentially?
think we can definitely consider that and
Just
look
stand
into it.
yeah, I was just curious. I mean, if it was something we're talking about before, maybe we look at it here too.
I don't think we've addressed that in the current proposal in front of you, but yeah, we can definitely look into it.
Okay. Thanks.
I concur. Was it just the use of SJDD that was just waived, no fee? So this one certainly takes that into consideration too.
That's what we were considering, waiving
Right.
for access to the ancestral property.
Okay. Okay.
But we can consider that for this as well.
That would be appropriate. They are another government. Okay. All right. Board? Does Mr. Countryman have his hand up? Okay. Audience? Nothing from the association? Nothing from the association. All right. Ms. Papalardo, you have a comment, question, input?
Yes, thank you, President Dolan. I do appreciate the idea of a waiver process in this and looking at disadvantaged communities. I think in the Delta in particular, all of the communities are disadvantaged out here. So hopefully that can take into some ag considerations or maybe if there's like a need-based situation where a family can't afford to do any work on their property, but they have to. Maybe considering something to that nature. Anyway, I like this idea and I thank you for the opportunity to comment again.
Is that the first time today someone said they liked the entire idea? Good job, Mr. Wright. Okay, anything else on this one, or can we move to the next topic? Next topic is proposed, wait.
I have 2 more slides.
Oh. I'm getting these words, but I can't hear them all correctly. You didn't speak up here, Mr. Leaf. Deferral. Mr. Wright.
Okay, yeah, next is deferrals. Again, we have no current adopted process to defer fees. We've discussed various options related to deferrals. The first one, defer to permit issuance. It's not ideal. State resources could be spent on a project that may not move forward, and it's really a reimbursement situation where we're not guaranteed to be reimbursed for our work. So it's not ideal. The next would be to set up quarterly payment plans that allows for the fee to be separated into payments over time, easing the financial burden on the applicant, which is, it's great for the applicant. It kind of goes against the direction we're trying to go in relieving the general fund, in that there is a lot of behind the scenes processing and paperwork when every check comes in that costs time and money. The next would be to defer entirely, which essentially is a waiver. That's, again, in direct conflict with the direction the board's been giving to reduce reliance on the general fund.
So you're saying a deferral could be considered as equal to a waiver, therefore what? Do we call it a waiver, or we just ignore it?
Can we go back a slide, please? Yeah.
Okay. Back to the waiver?
I thought you wanted to talk about the deferral. No.
Deferral, okay. We're at deferral. Defer entirely equals waiver. Pretty much.
Basically, yes.
Effectively the same thing, okay.
I just want to
Member
be able to
Bosler.
clarify what we're talking about here, just, maybe I'm just slow. So a deferral would be a project that comes in and wants a permit, but then something happens and it doesn't go forward, or it's delayed by multiple years. Is that what we're talking about as a deferral?
No, more towards the fee, deferring the fee. So instead of having an upfront fee with the application, it would be deferred to a later time or entirely. Still process the application, but that fee would come later.
It would be similar to a waiver then. I'm trying to distinguish between the two. I mean, a waiver to me says, this is the fee you're owed, but we, for some circumstance or some condition, we're going to waive the fee. A deferral of the fee, I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. you're going to pay later.
Is it a postponement?
Oh, like when you get funded maybe or something?
Maybe, yeah,
Oh, okay.
somewhere along the line, maybe the funding comes in and then they can make the fee payment.
You're doing a project, but you're not going to receive the money for it until you finish it. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you get the money to start your construction, sometimes you have to put it forward and then you're repaid. I don't know. I'm just reading deferral equals waiver, but there you are. Mr. Lyons, and then Member Grego. All right, Member Grego, you're first.
Thank you. So I know that the deferral programs have been used through the county to try to incentivize projects that maybe don't have the funds right up front, but they can put them on the back end. But I kind of like that quarterly payment thing, so they know up front that this is going to be required in order to keep the project going on. So that kind of leads me to my last question for the day. Once this is gone through the process of being adopted, and are we assuming that the state's not going to fund anything that we do here and that is totally going to be done by fees? Or is there going to be something like a subvention program like this that the Delta has? Or is there just going to be a request every year that we need this much money in order to keep operating and still rely partially on the general fund? I don't know who that question's for, but those are the questions in my brain that I have after listening to all this.
Well, we have someone who's been wrangling our budget now since he's been executive officer. And it's not been fun. Mr. Lee.
Chris Leaf, Executive Officer. So I don't have an exact answer for you, but I would anticipate that we would be having discussions with our, I call them casually our fiscal overlords, but Department of Finance and then the legislature about once we have new fees in place and we have some history on what is coming in, on how to adjust the balance of our funding between fees and general fund. There's still going to be general fund necessary to support our operations. It also will come into play when we request additional resources because we don't have sufficient staff to perform all the duties that are imposed on us by law. So it's an easier conversation when we can go to finance and the legislature where we can say, we have a fee base to support this activity, and they should provide us those additional bodies that we can use those fees to pay for and provide better services to the community.
Okay, thank you very much. And I'm going to go back to the deferral question, and I'm assuming that staff is asking us which one do we like the best? Is that what you're asking? Or are you just giving us some options here and we decide when we adopt this?
Those are really the options that we looked at. And of course, we would appreciate board input and direction moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's a nice tool to work with, especially for small rural communities that don't have a lot of money up front, that might be waiting for grant money or whatever coming, in the future, that we use some type of quarterly payment plan, just to simply say we're going to waive it. I mean, if they follow within that criteria that this board, that you recommend and this board adopts, then they would be waived. But if there is the ability to defer it, then we use the payment option plan, to try to make it easy, a little bit kinder and easier on these projects in the future. That's my thought. Thank you.
Mr. Valens?
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with you. And my question was going to be, it's kind of related, Michael, but basically I want to make sure I heard you right. The quarterly payment plan, which appealed to me just hearing it, I know we're just in discussion mode right now, but then did I hear you right where each check that comes, basically it's like doing the process 4 times, is that what you're saying? And that's why that's not a great one? Because it feels like we could do the work once and the checks come in different times. That's okay, but I just want to make sure I kind of understood that more. Is that like a significant burden, or is that just, not ideal? Because it appeals to me in terms of helping other folks, space out payments, collect money, whatever they have to do.
Right. I think in general for the smaller payments, you know, if it was a $5,000 total fee, and so we receive $1,000 to, you know, $1,200 check quarterly. By the time that check is accepted and processed through the payment and deposited, there's quite a bit of money spent just in staff time, state staff time. So it really reduces that down. In the grand scheme of things, the bigger, larger budget picture, it's not that huge of a deal. Right.
I'll take the checks to the bank if that.
Nobody heard your comment, Ms. Okay. Member Andrews.
Thank you. On the specific topic of deferrals, none of these directly deal with we have to wait till the project is done and we get access to more money. So unless you're interpreting some of them differently. But I'm curious, you know, when I pay my insurance monthly instead of annually, they charge an extra fee on top. Any reason we couldn't do that?
I would
So that-
suggest you change insurance. I don't have that.
But if we're going to allow people to spread the payments out over time, whether quarterly, biannually, you know, are we talking quarterly through the project? You know, is there any reason that we couldn't charge a surcharge to have it spread out that way and thereby cover the additional processing costs?
I don't think there's any reason why we couldn't.
Yeah. well,
So
conundrum.
if you pay the entire fee up front, you get a bit of a discount as opposed to paying quarterly. We just didn't really add that in or think of it.
And I do pay annually. I don't like paying that extra fee.
I guess that because you're pretty smart. Well, comments from the audience? Nope. A hand up? No hand up? Member Johnson?
Yes, this is Brian Johnson. Yeah, I didn't intend to offer a comment, but just listening to all of the possible versions of this makes me wonder if one approach is just to leave some flexibility in the rule and say, you know, something about, you know, timing of payment can be adjusted if it's in the public interest, or even for waiver, maybe that's something that comes to the board, but you've got sort of a broader, you know, set of not tying, you know, future board staff and members' hands just because we didn't think of something that, you know, will come up, which will be a good idea later.
Yeah. Well, a waiver is you don't pay the fee. There's circumstances where the decision is made, there's not going to be a fee that you're going to pay. A deferral is some process where there is payment, but it's not, here's your bill, pay. So it'd be timing and all that. So maybe we call it flexibility. I like that. Okay, I got the right one. All right. More? Ms. Papa, I'm gonna just say Emily.
Thank you.
Sorry.
My only question was, what currently do you bring in fees for like small encroachments? And what do you anticipate? And does that significance of change make a difference to the legislature, or do they just want to see that you're improving your ability to bring on some of the costs on yourself?
I do want Mr. Leave to answer that. You're the one talking with these folks who want this.
Yeah, currently, since the fees went into effect in 2019, we've been bringing in a total of $300,000 to $400,000 a year in fees. I don't think we have an estimate of what this new fee structure would bring in. It depends on the mix that is ultimately adopted. And that would, you know, we'd need to develop some history on that before asking for the associated expenditure authority for those fees.
That sounds to me like the answer is it remains to be seen. Nothing's for certain with the legislature, but we do have some direction that we've got to do fees, and we want them to be appropriate and acceptable to us, to our clients, to our partners, and to the legislature that funds us. These are, yeah, these aren't straightforward answers. We're going to work on it. Any more input on deferrals? All right. Who's the refund person?
That would still be me.
All right, there you are.
Ne-
I saw that now. I thought it was all at one, but it's the same title, 3 different divisions. Okay, refunds.
This is my last slide to go over refunds.
This is a tough
And much like the others, we currently have no adopted process to refund fees. Occasionally, we will refund a fee in certain circumstances. That could be a mistake we've made in determining the fee amount. It could be the applicant submitted too large of a fee for the work that they needed, or it could be the applicant wanted to pull back their application shortly after submitting it, meaning we haven't really done any work on it, so we've spent no time. So we have in the past provided refunds. Our proposal to have somewhat of a 2-step payment process, I think, would eliminate the need for refunds. There would be the initial application fee, which allows the staff to determine the completeness of the submittal. And before we continue working on that application, they would receive a letter that says, your application's complete. Now you must pay the rest of the fee, whatever that is, before we continue to process. So then the applicant would know how much it's going to cost and if they want to continue or not. If they don't want to continue, then we could administratively close that application. We have administratively closed some applications, and once that happens and the applicant decides they want to come back and restart that application, it requires a new application fee because we've already spent the original application fee in the original completeness review.
I read this as the refund comes if they paid the whole fee for a project that they then did not choose to do.
If they choose not to do it in a short enough time frame before we've spent considerable amount of time working on it,
Okay.
then we, in the past, a couple times it's happened, we've refunded that application fee.
Yeah. Well, why not? They're not going forward. Okay. Board member questions? Input? Concerns? Mila? Is that a yes? Okay. All right. Audience? No association? You like the refund idea, is that it?
I like a refund on all my applications.
Okay. Understood. No hands up? Okay. Not a lot of input on that one, Mr. Wright. Seemed pretty straightforward. Okay. Who does the new process for future fee updates?
I'm happy to take that one.
Ms. Buckley.
So we alluded to at the beginning of this workshop that our fees have been static since 2019. So we are building in some administrative language, and so that Section 8 will need to be amended to delete the references to that static fee table that is currently with our regs. And then board staff would maintain the new fee ranges on the website. Promulgating new regulations every time we would need to do a inflationary-based adjustment is pretty time-consuming and resource-intensive. So we're hopeful that this language in our upcoming package would allow for those inflationary adjustments. Next slide, please. So staff is proposing the inflationary adjustment be applied to that initial base fee only. And then the guide we'd be using for determining that percentage adjustment will be based on the California Consumer Price Index published and publicly available on California Department of Finance in the form of their annual budget letter, price letter standards.
Thank you for pointing out what that was, because I couldn't find a magnifying glass big enough to read that, except for the words budget letter.
So, yeah, so that's produced annually and will provide hopefully some transparency to the regulated community on what we're applying to that base fee. We're also planning on pursuing some administrative parameters surrounding these adjustments, such as a grace period, a 30, 60, or 90-day in effect after the board makes the decision to approve that inflationary update. So that's under consideration. More specifics relating to odd or even number years for those, but we are proposing every 2 years for those inflationary updates, not an annual. We're also would like to, of course, provide opportunity for comment and consideration of these adjustments as we do them through our board meeting or board business process. But this should keep the fee schedule more in line without going through the promulgation of new regulations every time we need to do these inflationary adjustments. Any questions
Well,
or
because if we went through the
discussion?
regulations, then we'd be past the time period for a new adjustment, and then we'd be writing new regulations and be past that. It might be very appropriate that some folks would want us to just continue that merry-go-round. But
So that's the goal of this,
Yeah.
this language that we would be proposing.
Right. No, I found when I joined this board that the way regulations are promulgated and ultimately approved is vastly different than the way we do it county government. It's bizarre. Talk about paper intensive. All right, questions on this? To my right? I'm missing someone. Okay. Member Grego's chair is absent right now, so we'll wait. Anyone in the audience? You kind of knew an adjustment would come, right? Looking at Mr. Engler. Anyone online? No? Okay. Periodic adjustment fee.
All right.
Next steps.
Next steps.
Ms. Buckley?
So this is our last slide. We will be taking these comments into consideration while we are drafting the language that we will be presenting in our OAL package. Our expectation is fall of 2025 for that action before the board. And then winter 2025 and 26 for the package submittal and the filing with the Secretary of State, rounding out our rulemaking for fees effort. All right, next slide, please. Oh, go ahead, Mr. Chabell.
Sorry, I just wanted to add one little thing on the previous slide. For all those rulemaking nerds out there, that would be the initial statement of reasons and initial package, because the regulation process bakes in public comment for that. So this would be the initial, output of what those proposed regulations are, and then it would be finalized.
Thank you
Sorry.
for that, Preston.
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate that.
Okay. What? Okay, that was a never mind. I hope it is fall of this year. I know sometimes things occur where it takes time, and I understand that, and see that that's what happened from the initial imposition of fees to now, and it's a concern that it takes that long, because the jump for adjusting is hard to take, hard to vote for, frankly. So we'll do that. So, yeah, let's maybe have a little input at some board meetings of how it's going, rather than wait for it to be proposed.
Happy to do that as
There's
well.
always wrinkles in these things, always wrinkles in how this can be done expeditiously. Okay. Yeah, here's the steps. There's more steps than you're putting there. Okay. Questions, input, discussion from board? Mr. Johnson, you want to wrap this up?
I won't say that I'll wrap it up. I'll wrap it up for me anyway.
Okay.
Brian Johnson here. Just a couple of, quick things. As I said earlier, I think the general approach is sound and appreciate all the work that's gone into it. And, my rationale would largely mirror what Board Member Bosler said at the very beginning, and then, the second time she spoke about it. I do think that there might be, as normally the case, opportunity to continue to refine it and tweak it, and appreciate Mr. Engler, your comments being constructive about it. I know there's at least one thing you really don't like, but then also had constructive feedback, and I'm particularly interested to see what you think after you come, get the comments and have a chance to think about it again, about maybe bundling the ongoing costs of inspections in with an initial permit for, and having the two-tier base fee for the system improvements, given the, really broad range of possible project types there. Last thing, I was just, I looked up, a couple of other agencies, and I've got Department of Fish and Wildlife here for lake and stream bed alteration agreements, and I'm just going to put out some stats for the audience and into the transcript, because I think it's an interesting comp. Their layout is all based on size of the project, and not project type for the most part. And they've got a really broad range. The lowest ones of 5-year agreements or less for a $5,000 project is a $750 fee. Projects that are longer than 5 years and $500,000 or more is their top tier, which is small by our, some of our project standards, is $9,000 base fee plus $15,000, so $25,000 for a $500,000 project. And then they also have some of you have probably worked with our master agreements, which are the really big projects and the ones that roll out over a period of time. And those are $113,000 upfront and $9,000 a year. We can, we all know how a lot of other agencies work too. There's a strong case to be made that a lot of this stuff is public benefit and, could be general fund. But given the landscape that we've got and the need to get fees, I think, the approach you're taking makes a lot of sense. And I know that it won't pay the total cost. It's just meant to offset some part of it. So thank you.
Thank you for that input. I made those notes to look at that too. Member Andrews.
I want to congratulate the staff on the approach that you've taken to all of these and really appreciate using the data that we've been collecting for a considerable number of years at this point. I understand that our goal in part is to recover some portion of our costs. I think that's an appropriate goal for a variety of reasons. And I guess the thing that I'm struck by is just the transaction costs of dealing with a lot of very small permit fees on, small encroachments or things where we're talking about just a couple $100. And in the interests of greater levels of compliance and reducing those transaction costs, I would urge us to, if we think about that difference between the actual staff time costs and what we're going to charge in staff time costs, I'm going to call that difference a buffer. And I think if we have a smaller buffer on those large ticket items where we can get a considerable fee in for a single project, having a smaller buffer there and a bigger buffer for those very small projects that are going to be hard to process small fee amounts and hit small landowners at a higher level. It just is going to be better for compliance, and also I think is going to be easier for the public to take. So I think of it as sort of efficiency in charging for the services that we provide. The more we can be efficient about how we structure this, I think that the better served we will be in terms of a system that will be best for the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Bosler, you're unusually quiet.
Yeah,
Not
no,
anymore.
I want to align my comments with both of my
I'm with you.
board members. And I just think that we have to stay focused on what we're trying to accomplish, and the backlog and the unpermitted encroachments on our system, like, is the in context that we need to evaluate an effective fee schedule through that lens. And, you know, I think we can do harm here in what we're trying to do, which is protect and improve the state plan of flood control. And so I just caution and really align my comments with Board Member Andrews about the small dollar ones. Just not, we need to be mindful that there's a big difference between $1,000 and $4,000 for a lot of people. And also, I just want to say that we need to keep working on improving our processes, and that means aligning with all of the other agencies that are involved in the process. I still want to, I mean, I think I already said this once today, but, you know, just a really thoughtful presentation about the 408 permit process a couple of meetings ago. More of that, please, because we don't have time, and it's too expensive, and we have a lot to do. So that's my encouragement, to keep looking for places we can shave time and money off in this review. That's very important that we do, but needs to be in the context of progress.
Well said. You'll go? Mr. Valens? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want to thank staff, so the presenters, and then everybody who works with you to do the presenting and all the information. You know, if somebody was just like zooming in today, you know, from the public, they're like, oh, here we go again, you know, government's just trying to raise fees on us. And so I just want to kind of level set first. We asked you to do this. Thank you. Second, none of us want to do it, but we're in this position where we have a legal responsibility and we're trying to figure out how to do it, and it's not going to come from the general fund. So I just want to sort of acknowledge it's a weird position that we're all in, but we have to go through this and kind of see what it looks like, get the feedback from everybody. So you were the tip of the spear in doing that today, and I just appreciate you all doing it. And I think it was very effective, and it's like, I think Madam Chair, you said, Madam President, you said a couple of times, like, you know, you said everyone's eyebrows were going up, so you did your job. Got everybody going, oh, I like that, I hate that, oh, I don't want to do that. But just to kind of just level set for the public out there that this is a tough time, but we do have a responsibility for public safety. We have to look at this and sort of go through this process. So that was all I wanted to say. That was a good presentation. We've asked for it, and there's a sort of a schedule laid out now, which means, you know, action will occur. And so we just keep moving forward and refining. I think that was a good point that was made.
Thank you. Member Grego?
Yeah, I just want to say I made it in time to the meter to feed it, so I didn't have to ask for a deferred program to pay off the ticket. And
I wondered where you went. I thought it was that.
I'm out of breath right now trying to make it there. So, no, I want to thank our staff for a great presentation. You know, it's, you know, I like I've mentioned before, I sit on a lot of different boards, and so this is a discussion that I'm used to, and that, you know, this is where we're at in government, is that, you know, play to pay, and that's there's no difference here in this board. You know, I agree with everything that's been said. This work that we do, this infrastructure is so darn important. It's the most, and I'll say it again, it's the most important infrastructure there is, because without it, everything else is underwater. So it's going to be hard. You know, we'll monitor it. We have some flexibility within, you know, the discussion that we had today about those jurisdictions that may have a tough time with this, that we have some flexibility to waive or defer. I like those types of tools. We'll have a couple of years down the road to look to see how effective it was and whether we need to, you know, make changes. So I think this dialogue that we've had today was beneficial, and you know, I'm looking forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any wrap-up comments from our friends there? Any hands up? Well, I too, I agree with everything that the board said. Thank you, staff. Oh, forget that I started that. Ms. McGowan put her hand up. Ms. McGowan?
My computer's going crazy. Okay, I just first off wanted to take a moment and sincerely thank the board, and especially all the staff members. You know, I've had the privilege of working with 2 or 3 of them directly, and I find it always an invaluable help to the process that I do out here for our community. And I just really appreciate all of the thoughts and inputs and this open discussion. It's a hard topic, and the only thing that I kind of would like to, I'm going to say again, with the community taking on a much larger burden of payment, there needs to also be a shift in the service that they receive for that. So through the rest of the talk today, I didn't hear of any ways to improve the service, so I would like that taken into consideration. The comments that are always made about insufficient staff to get things done, that's been a situation for the last 5 years. I just went back through my emails looking how many times that's in my emails, and it's multiple times. A simple confirmation return email that somebody has received a question and they're working on it goes a very long way. Total silence for months is difficult to tell our clients, well, we're trying to get a hold of people, but we can't. So I just kind of would like to see something put into what you're doing to address the service that's received for the public. And thank you very much, all of your time and your efforts. I can't say enough how thankful I am that you're doing this so well. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you for the compliments. They go to our staff. Thank you to the board, because we take this seriously for public input and to do the best we can. And I'm going to say I did hear from at least all of the presenters that they're looking at ways to improve the service too, and that's partly why we need to do this, and not just complain that we are understaffed, even though that's a fact of life that we are. So we're trying to do that. Member Bosler.
I just think that is, the service aspect, I think, is really important.
It is.
Because, I mean, part of the direction here that I've been hearing, however, I don't see it in a written form except for from 2018, is that they want less general fund and more fees. So if we just do a swap today, we're still going to be providing bad service, right? Very long lines, and it's just going to cost more. So I do think there's a way in which we do, raise more fees, stabilize our funding source, but we do need to be very mindful that swap out is not going to improve the backlog, which is massive, all the encroachments that are unpermitted, all of the things that we hear, month in and month out that we know exist today. So in the context of today's budget, which is really, really, really tough and getting tougher by the week, I just think that needs to be understood and thoughtfully considered by the legislature and others.
Here, here. We'll work on that. I also want to thank the Central Valley Flood Control Association for its involvement and being willing to have continual consultation through this. And I'm thankful to our staff for knowing that and organizing that so that we didn't have all of their input today. You worked on all of that for us. So if there's not, this is the point on our agenda that I would ask, is there any public comment that someone has for an item they're interested in or want to say something that was not on the agenda today? I see no one in the audience. Do we have any hands up? No hands up? Well, that's a first. So that's good. Okay. Next meeting is the 25th of this month. You think we're going to be here?
Yes.
We're going to be here. Okay. Then we are. Nothing else? Meeting adjourned.